Fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room. The only way to start your day.
Hello. Good morning. How are you doing? It's the 38th day of January 2019. How are you doing? Welcome. Ndu?
Yes.
17 more days to the end of the month.
Till the end of the month.
Oh, yes.
It's a slow start to 2020. Good morning.
Good morning.
Mm-hmm.
City Muga is, of course, on his 15th day of work. That wisdom. Yeah, I see it. I wish you'd explain this last year. The problem with you, City, is we're trying to ask you, so why are you doing this? Like, it's just how I do things. You're the kind of guys who come up across an opportunity and you just tell people, there's something I'm doing.
You keep it to yourself.
There's something I'm doing.
Well, I take the view that the people I'm speaking to have eyes and they can see, and they have ears and they can hear. And they have brains that they can use. So surely, when someone does something, having spoken about it, it then becomes, I think, fairly obvious what he's doing. But you have a point, and the point is, a little explanation sometimes goes a long way.
One, it'll help. Situache nyuma next time.
Okay.
When you see another opportunity,
Yes.
like that plot that's near the SGR,
Hiyo.
tell us.
Nitawambia tu. In fact, kuna ingine nimeona.
Wengine umeona?
Na hata haina mtu.
Haina mtu.
Na hakuna skuli karibu. Iko tu plot imekaa tu peke yake.
Na ni flat.
Na ni flat straight.
Straight.
Ukikaa unaona mwisho hii, ile ingine na hata mali unasimama unaona.
Bas. So we can bring in our guy from the lands office.
Yes, tuanze na survey.
Tuanze na survey.
Because niliambiwa hata ile plot ambayo iko next. Pia haina mtu.
Nimeambiwa.
And that's how the cookie crumbles.
Yes, it does, doesn't it just?
As always, a lot happens, and the following happened between 10 a.m. and 6 a.m.
Right. And as no surprise, Deputy President William Ruto is on the front cover rather front pages of both dailies today. Let's take the story from the Daily Nation. DP Ruto accused of diverting villagers' water to his farm. Farmer from Sugoi has grabbed all our water, according to the county. Deputy President William Ruto is an avid farmer. He knows where opportunities lie and will go to great lengths to experiment with new ideas. This enthusiasm has seen him buy chicken from Israel and chicken eggs from Khartoum. However, the drive to excel at farming has put him on a collision path with the Taita Taveta County government and villagers who accuse him of diverting water to his ranch as they go thirsty. Mr. Ruto bought a ranch in the county from a former MP, Basil Criticus, and set out to rear livestock. So now they're accusing him of having diverted their water supply and they're going thirsty. They cannot water their
From
livestock.
Lake Jipe.
Right. They cannot water their livestock. They cannot use it for any kind of agriculture because the water has been diverted to his farm. Okay.
You know what was said by the late Wangari Maathai to be the next frontier for war, global war. And it starts like that. It's just with small-time communities, arguing about access to the resource. And I think this is a very straightforward matter, in my opinion. This is a matter where, yes, so there's a big ranch here. There's a big farming activity that's going to happen. Go through the entire process. Have, at the local level, there are water resource users associations. So just have a discussion at the Water Resource Users Association, talk to the Water Resource Management, look, how do we use this for this commodity? If it's affecting people downstream, then maybe be allowed to sink boreholes or something like that, or whatever. find amicable ways of working around it. The report, of course, goes to say that attempts to have a conversation with the farm management have borne no fruit because the farm manager refused to open the gate to let them in to come and have a conversation. The county government officials were coming to have a conversation with the farm manager, and
how long has this problem been brewing?
Clearly, it's been for some time now. It's come to a head now. Clearly,
I would actually ask the question: has it actually come to a head? Because even when Basil Criticus
owned the ranch,
yes, there were always issues.
Yes, the issue is not that. I think at this point it's because now, of course, Deputy President William Ruto is in the mix. I'm sure if we went back, we would see that they always had an issue with the diversion of water.
Yeah.
It's just coming out now because this particular name has come
I'm
into
actually
the
questioning
mix.
whether this issue of water is actually true.
whether the water is the issue.
Is
Yes,
the issue.
I mean, that's what I'm actually asking. Something doesn't make sense to me. If water normally moves from rivers into a lake, not the other way around.
Right.
Yeah.
So are they saying that the rivers that feed that particular lake is where the water is being diverted from?
The county government claims that Ruto has diverted the main water pipeline that serves the location to his farm for his private use. It moved to the Taveta Law Court seeking orders allowing its officials and police officers to access the farm, saying locals depend on the water for both domestic use and irrigation. So it's the piped water now that they're accusing
Now,
him of having
let me ask the
diverted.
question that I actually want to ask. How on earth does an individual divert water without the connivance of the government in place?
So others were involved.
Water resource is devolved in many counties.
Yes.
So how on earth did he, if we're to take that accusation as being true, divert this water without the understanding and connivance of the people of that particular county or the officials who manage water in that county?
That's why the county is the one that's going to court, because it's claiming it was not involved.
It was not involved in this process. Interestingly enough, 2 weeks ago, there was a meeting that was held at the farm where the DP was present, and area politicians and Jubilee leaders attended the water executive Gaspar Kabaka. And he said efforts to engage the farm's management to release the water have been futile. Crucial institutions like schools and health facilities have been affected as a result of this diversion of the water.
I know
this main
something.
pipe.
There could be a political angle to this. Of course, in the other matters of land ownership and keeping off squatters and coming in and, people who had eyed the Basil Critical's land for long and it going to somebody else. But there's an issue of water. The people who want to benefit from this water are basically just ordinary people in these villages. There is definitely an issue of water. They can't just pick something out of the...
No.
It's
Definitely
something
there's a
that's
problem
there.
somewhere. And
Now
we
it's
have
being used
authorities
for other, political reasons, but there is an issue of water. And I think it's a very simple thing, like I said. It's something that they need to just discuss and agree. This is how we want to use the water. As a large farm, we need this X amount of water. As the local community, you need X amount of water. We shall ensure access for your drinking and local use. Simple. It should be a conversation that can just happen.
that can be had and be sorted out.
Yes.
Wangari Maathai did have a point. If you look at some of the inter-community battles that we've seen, for instance, in Tana River, it's usually about this same thing, water.
Yep.
Because you have a community who are pastoral, they have herds and herds of cattle, and the water source is that river, that Tana River. Now, there are other locals who are farmers, and they tend to plant or they tend to have their farms near the water. So what happens is that these individuals who have cattle will lead their cattle to the water, and often it has to pass through a maize plantation. And maize is really very pleasantly sweet.
Yeah.
It is, isn't it?
Yes, and the cattle will... You see, the cattle don't understand that this is someone's maize. That particular memo doesn't actually get to them. So they chomp their way right through the maize onto the river. And the next thing you know, these two communities are at war.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and it's over
It's
and
over
over
and over and over again.
and over and over again.
Oh, yeah.
Yet the resource is available. If planned properly, one could even access that water without necessarily disturbing someone else's farm. This water has been available for the longest time. I'm still taking this issue back to the county. Well, I'm taking it back to the county. If somebody has a farm and there's something they want to do, there's very little that you can do within a county without talking to county officials. Believe me, it's next to impossible.
Right.
Unless someone is telling me you came with your own pipe, you came with your own engineers, you came, unless that is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Now, why I bring in the issue of planning is because when you plan for these things, you understand the usage as well. You know, because of the size of this operation, this is the sort of water they will need. Our villages and schools will require this. Someone dropped the ball somewhere.
It's a joke.
Someone dropped the ball somewhere.
Another story here. The Finnish bird dies a week after rescue. So remember that bird, the migratory bird that came all the way from Finland, and then it got caught up in some fishing nets, right? So it was taken to ICU, 8 passed away.
It's very sad.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful bird, though.
After traveling nearly 7,000 kilometers.
The thing you must bear in mind is that these birds, one of the reasons why you find their migratory pattern can be that prolonged is their main diet is actually fish. And if you understand how these birds function, people wonder about how do they travel such long distances. If a bird has a long wingspan, all it requires is for the wind current to sort of like glide. It glides.
It just glides.
Yes, it just spreads its wings.
So it doesn't need to flap.
No, it doesn't require energy. The wind will take it along, and they understand wind patterns.
Okay. I can imagine that thing crossing an entire lake or ocean.
And then
it has an excellent digestive system because it knows how to restore food.
Oh, yeah.
It also knows how to retain food for long distances. Yes. I'm sure they marvel at how we have to eat so often.
right. When they have the conversation amongst themselves.
These
These
humans are really strange. And they eat so many things at the same time. No wonder they don't live long.
Same thing we ask ourselves about cattle and livestock, right? The Daily Nation is spreading this story on their hospitals, right? So the entire page today, Council promises to follow up by all means, including acting as a complainant for public good. So it's talking about the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Council, the one that regulates health practitioners in the country. And it's saying that the council has taken over the matter. Now, here is the issue, though. Very many people are complaining on social media about being mistreated or overly charged at these private health facilities, including the public health facilities. But those complaints do not end up at the desk of the council, and that's what the council is saying. Some of the complaints that we've received are so few that, well, what we are seeing in social media is much, much more. It's about 8.85% of the kind of complaints that they received on social media. Only 103 people have filed complaints about being overcharged in health facilities.
And what has happened to these 103
who've actually,
who filed? What has happened?
We want a good number. I don't know. Well, they're saying that they've been investigating.
But I am sure, Eric, if something had been done, one might have known about it and the social media would have spoken about it.
Yes.
It comes as no surprise that people are not willing to forward or table these complaints because
you don't see action.
Yes, you don't. So why bother? That's the question they ask. Why should we bother?
I think it even begins from the point of the people don't know where they should complain. People don't know where this council is. People don't know how they can access the council to lodge your complaint. So as long as you're saying that you're complaining, so where do you take your complaint to? And remember the other time when we raised the issue of how these private hospitals are behaving. Remember when we were talking about private hospitals demanding a certain amount of down payment before they admit a patient,
yes,
even in an emergency case?
Yes.
And we called Dr. Yumbia, this CEO of the council, yes, and he was telling us some of the challenges that they have is they don't have teeth to bite. They require some regulations to be passed by Parliament. And because they're just a council, they're under a parent ministry. Parent ministry is the one that needs to take this matter before Parliament. Parliament, I think that the Committee for Delegated Legislation, Gladys Cholet, needs to be to receive those regulations. So the only thing they can do is license doctors. The only other thing that they can do is license facilities. The other thing that they do is, because there's a code of conduct of how much any doctor should charge, this is the ceiling. That's what they look at. And are you operating with a license, valid license or not? So there are very many other things I think that this council requires.
And this status quo that we were being spoken to about, it has been there for yonks, hasn't it?
Years.
Precisely. So does this tell you that this particular council are people who are actually actively agitating for change, really, or do they prefer the status quo?
It's a status quo.
A status quo for sure.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about it and thinking, it's not that these people don't know. These are doctors. Mr. Yumbia is not a doctor, but the council has some doctors as well. There are doctors. It's about regulating doctors and the medical practice. Very many doctors at policy level in government, very many doctors at legislative level in government. If you just think about, we had a health minister who was a former CEO of Nairobi Hospital, the largest private facility in the region. We had a PS, who's now the PS for Lands, Mr. Muragori. Dr. Muragori was the Director of Medical Services. If we come to Parliament, one of the doctors who successfully performed the first open heart surgery in East Africa, Professor Sam Ongeri, has been in Parliament for years. Dr. James Nikal is in Parliament, is a former Director of Medical Services.
PS as well.
And a PS. We have people who know these things at all levels. And even doctors
Dr.
are senior.
Eseli Simiyu is a medical doctor. Believe there are many.
And all of them, they know.
There are many. They're not
what
2
is
or
needed.
3. There are many. And there's an entire committee that deals with health matters within that very parliament. And it's populated predominantly by medical doctors. So the question one asks is, do they genuinely want to see change? Because if all we do is back and forth and we're talking about the status quo, the indication is that they prefer the status quo.
Yeah, that's how they just operate. It's status quo, things work this way. I think then pressure needs to come from other quarters.
Well, in order to get something done, absolutely.
And
because within
we are the
themselves,
other
it's kind of like, right, they have a mutual understanding between themselves, amongst themselves. And it's very difficult to get within the same profession, this brotherly kind of approach to everything. It's very difficult to get one to turn on the other.
We are the other quarter.
One actually isn't even asking them to turn on the other. It's just to be fair.
Just do your job.
I mean, regulating yourself often means that you have amongst yourself people who are rogue. It's calling them to book and saying, excuse me, or calling them out. This ought not to be done, and this is what we're going to do as a result of it. Now, do they have a regulatory code? Do they have a code of conduct by which they regulate their members, etc., etc.? I mean, every organization has these things. That's why you'll find, for instance, if it's the group of accountants, they will deregister you if you don't do certain things.
Yes.
Now, even doctors have them because they are doctors, people who have been deregistered. It's not that they haven't. They have. But the numbers are few.
That's it.
They're very few.
You take your complaint to the council about a doctor. It takes a while for that to be investigated.
You'll even forget you took a complaint. That's how long it takes. So people give up.
I think the coverage of this matter is important. So it brings this conversation to the fore.
Absolutely.
And we start seeing this is exactly what's happening and this is what we need to do about it.
Right. So Embakasi East MP, Babu Wina, of course, was granted bail yesterday.
This is Mr. Ongili.
Sorry?
His name is Ongili.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Ongili. Paul, right?
Otherwise known as
Babu Owino. Mr. Ongili Paul, a.k.a. Babu Owino, was granted bail of 10 million shillings yesterday. And he's been asked to do certain things, or in this case, not do certain things, and stay away from alcohol and narcotics. And at the same time, this bail will be paid over the next 4 months, 2.5 million shillings per month. And the first installment due before then, he will be let go. And of course, this was in relation to paying the medical bills of the victim of this gunshot. So, interestingly enough, a lot of expression came out yesterday, and a lot of people were saying, well, okay, he's going to pay that 10 million, it's a done deal. The case is finished, it's done. We're not going to hear about this again.
There's also the other side of the argument. So people are asking, if you're saying that part of the bail that I am to pay is going to pay hospital bills, are you there for saying that I'm guilty?
Right. Exactly.
Actually,
why are you taking my money? So if
you're taking my money, then I've paid the price.
If eventually I'm found to have been innocent, what happens to my money?
Do I get it back? And who pays me?
Who
the
pays
state?
Me back?
of course, questions arising from that. It'll be interesting to see.
It's an interesting saga, but ask yourself, cases of this nature, usually there's more than one person arrested. If you remember the case of Aisha Jumwa, the gentleman who discharged the firearm was arrested, as was she.
Yep.
In the case of this gentleman, Paul Onkili, he is the only one who's been incarcerated. So he is the only suspect. So if he is the only suspect, he's the only person the fingers are being pointed at.
Yes.
So the issue of someone else paying this bill or they
does not emerge.
No, it doesn't. And someone who's alternately being accused, there's no one. It's him.
Yeah.
Yes.
But he may be found innocent of the charge.
That is very likely. And when that likelihood presents itself, then we'll have another discussion.
We'll have another issue altogether.
Yes, exactly. But for now...
But you see, Mr. Ongili himself went to court and said, you know what, Your Honor, I've been paying the bill for this guy. So he already said, I am paying a bill. I am footing the bill for the gentleman.
Right.
So
as a good Samaritan?
As a good Samaritan.
Yes, and I felt the responsibility
responsible
to
leader.
be able to do this because, I mean,
As
he sustained these injuries because of
in
me.
my presence.
In my presence. Not because of me.
Not because of me, in my presence. I was there.
He's
I'm
a
taking
man known to me.
responsibility as a leader. Here's what I want to do to make sure that this gentleman is okay. While he's in hospital, I will take up all the responsibility upon myself to make sure that his medical bills are paid for. And that's what I've done.
So this is going to be interesting. So 2.5 million shillings, immediately it goes to hospital, then the other 7.5 million, lipa pole pole.
Right, for 4 months. And
That's a generous offer.
isn't it?
Lipa pole pole. But enjoy your freedom.
Yes.
But also, during this time, please do not drink
and
alcohol
take narcotics.
or take any narcotics.
So it is assumed that they understand that he not only drinks alcohol, but he also takes narcotics.
Yes.
Have you ever heard of anyone being given such conditions?
No.
No, I haven't. Bail
No.
conditions, no.
So here's the bail condition, but at the same time, we're very concerned about your lifestyle that could lead you into 1, 2, 3 other problems. So stay away from this thing so that we don't see you here again.
Among the things that he had said was, I was under the influence. So in that case, ensure you don't get under any other influence, so I don't see you here on another matter because of this influence.
Right.
Keep away from influence.
Okay.
Today is Tuesday. It's Financial Tuesday. And the Financial Tuesday today on the Standard says, the big ugali lie. Now, according to new statistics, people are not eating ugali. They keep saying, oh, ugali is our staple food. Oh, it's a lie.
They're eating it all right.
Kenyans are eating rice and chapati 8 times more than ugali.
Yes, but as I said, it's not that they're not eating ugali. They are eating ugali.
And which Kenyans are we talking about? Are we talking about Kenyans in Nairobi or are we talking about Kenyans in the rural area?
You're talking about Kenyans.
Eric, why don't you give us the stats?
Let me open that. So it's a feature. So it starts, of course, with a long story about Rick Kilonzo, a student in the University of Nairobi, was finishing up his breakfast when Financial Standard met him. Right?
Okay, they've met now. Carry on.
So increased food production to enhance food security. Consumption of cereals per person per year. Maize. In 1980, 127 kilograms of maize was being consumed. In 2018, 89 kilograms per person per year. Okay. Rice was only 2 kilograms per person per year in 1980. In 2018, 17 kilograms per person per year. And wheat, 15 kilograms, and has grown to 47 kilograms. So you see, there's an increase in rice and wheat, and there's a sharp decrease in maize consumption. The number of bags of maize produced that President Kenyatta's administration wants to achieve, up from the current 47 million bags of maize per year, the government wants to achieve 67 million bags per year. So if you read this feature, basically, it shows that more and more people are consuming chapati and rice.
That's a good thing, or is it a bad thing?
This lends credence to then that whole story of let's stop concentrating so much on grain, on maize, and saying the maize is a staple crop, spending so much money on growing maize, and saying National Cereals and Produce Board, the only cereal it knows is
what
maize.
What was the sample size of that particular survey? And
I don't know.
And among whom did they conduct it?
Yeah,
I mean, that question, I have to ask that
all
question.
All those questions, eh?
Because the figures are interesting, but how did you arrive at them?
Oh, yeah.
It's a household
where is
survey
the
by
sample population taken
Tegemeo
from?
Institute, the one for Egerton University. It's a policy think tank affiliated to Egerton, found that there has been a decline in consumption of maize. This is a 2015 survey.
You know, it may very well be true that dietary preferences have altered. These things do happen. And it may be as a result of, the availability of some of these foodstuffs and the comparative costs.
The cost.
Yes, because if you're talking about the nutritional value, I think the three things that you've mentioned, the three items of food that you've mentioned, have more or less the same nutritional value. They all provide, yes, they all provide the same nutritional value. So if you find that the cost element favors your pocket, then of course you will be inclined in a certain direction.
Yeah, when you're going for starch, you just go for.
Yes, but then also consider that one of the things that may have driven people away from maize meal, it has, over time, the cost has increased. It's not that it's gone down. It's supposed to be available in abundance, but its costs over time has, should we say, approximated what we call it's prohibitive.
Yes.
Because
it has become a political tool as well.
It has, hasn't it?
Yes. Maize and maize meal have just become political tools. So that's it in the financial standards today. Gains from EPZ as well, despite huge tax incentives. This is another story that's talking about Kenya is foregoing huge tax income from companies operating in the EPZ whose returns are not commensurate with the economy's expectations and targets. This is as the firm's key role of creating employment and growing the economy dim. While the companies operating at various EPZs and their volumes of export goods have been growing over time, their contribution to the economy has stagnated, according to the Tax Justice Network Africa, a lobby against tax evasion. After analysis from various state agencies, including the EPZ Authority, the TJNA noted that the contribution of firms operating EPZs to the country's GDP dropped over time, accounting for 0.96% of the GDP in 2016. This is in comparison to 1.04% in 2012, which has since gone down to 0.87% in 2018. So their contribution to GDP is coming down, whereas we have more and more activities at the EPZ. Yeah. And I think one of the things that we'll be discussing later, CT, is activities that take place in these EPZs.
Yes, we'll be looking at it because, yes, it actually covers something that is fundamental to any country that is seeking to get to the takeoff stage in development.
Yep.
And that is the nature of foreign assistance, which we can call aid, and what it entails and what it means and what it brings with it. Yes. And, of course, there's the term that was coined in the 90s by World Bank and other such institutions, conditionalities.
Go with it or go with it.
The World Bank conditionalities. There's another story about ODM and what it's pushing, the new push by ODM in the BBI process. It's pushing for more centers of power. We'll be joined by the ODM Secretary General, Edwin Sifuna, between 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. And we'll be discussing more about what ODM's strategy in this BBI sensitization meetings when they come here. So, of course, ODM the Orange Democratic Movement has launched a fresh bid to reintroduce regional governments and the post of Executive Prime Minister in the BBI report. The two proposals have become key talking points in the ongoing consultative forums, particularly in Kakamega and Mombasa, which are under ODM governors. The Raila Odinga-led party has proposed the introduction of 14 regional governments and assemblies, as well as the adoption of a parliamentary system led by a powerful Prime Minister. Remember, this is, as Sifuna had told us when he had come here last time, this is among the things that they had proposed to the BBI team in the first place. And then it did not come out in the BBI report. So they're revisiting. This is where we shall revisit comes into play. Regional governments.
Revisit. And the revisitation is actually happening.
If you ask me, there are many things that I think the BBI captured, but they understood that it perhaps wasn't prudent for them to air it or to bring it out in the public domain.
In the first place.
Yes, because they probably understood what the responses will be. And it's becoming clearer that what these rallies that we are seeing are doing, they're bringing out those very things that they had intended initially and had probably spoken to the team about, but now they bring it out in the form of rallies. But
Popularizing
yes,
them, so to
exactly.
speak.
So it's not as though we are discussing something new or something that hadn't been thought of before. It's now I think they've figured the mode of presentation would be this. This would be a better way of presenting these ideas that they've had all along.
I'll be keen to hear from Mr. Sifuna when he comes in, this issue of 14 regional government, because this is one that I am unable to can.
It isn't a novel idea as such. PwC, together with some of these world financial bodies who understand economic issues, nuances, progresses, etc.,
Yeah.
had come up with this, and these were economic zones. It was
The economic blocks.
exactly. I'm calling it zone because the word block or automatically sort of like gives you a geopolitical configuration. That's what I'm avoiding to discuss. But let's call it a block, as you correctly put it. And they were all over the country. There's one that represented, say, the Mount Kenya region, etc., economic. And the thinking behind it was, why don't you put your resources together and see how you can benefit each other economically? Because on your own as a county, that won't be possible. But if a number of you, 6 or so of you get together, then these things become possible. That was the understanding. Now, this is the political twist that has come into it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Actually, the initial idea of the economic zones is contained even in the Constitution itself,
Yes,
and
it
even
is.
in the other laws that bring devolution to life. That it's possible for counties to collaborate and work together when they have common interests. And how they collaborate, they shall work out how they collaborate and work together. So when the PwC and the other consultants were brought in by the Council of Governors, advise us how we can roll out this, how we can make our counties and devolution more viable to the people.
Right.
They came up with these brilliant ideas. And basically
It's
just
actually
divided them out.
interesting that if you look at some of what we now refer to as the developed nations, say for instance in Europe,
Yeah.
many of them, you see, we started off as a country and with provinces. Now, they started the other way around because all these little units that were the equivalent of districts or the equivalent of provinces in our country were kingdoms. And they had their own kings or they had their own rulers. So it took maybe a strong man to unify them. But even prior to the unification, you would find that they were trading amongst each other. And they began as devolved units and then were brought together. Famous among these were what someone called Garibaldi did in Italy and what Bismarck did in Germany. That's what they did. Now, we have an advantage in that we are starting off already as a unit. So this unification process is not actually necessary. All you require is to understand how you can work among each other. But remember, these are people who are not just competing. They even went to war against each other. We don't even have those hurdles.
No.
So this should...
Well, we had them before the colonialists came in. I mean, we had the tribes.
We still have them, Eric.
We had them, but you see, now they were operating as independent kingdoms. Like
Eric,
the Maasai
Eric,
of the south, the Kambas.
Eric, they traded with each other.
They traded with each other.
They
but
had
were
issues.
distinct units.
Yes, they were, but they still are. Eric, even now, we still are. But the understanding was the unifying factor. You see, if you look at the regions that you speak of, people trade with each other and they had an understanding.
There was an understanding, and the kind of rivalry or conflict that would then come about later
Yep.
was not present at that time.
And even when it did, it wasn't something that was not easy to understand or easy to resolve. Do you know of any case in this country, for instance, where you had communities with long-standing battles that raged from year in, year out? The answer is no. There were skirmishes that lasted, they didn't even go a month, a week or two, and we knew why it was. We even knew the season. The seasons was when people had gone through a rite of passage.
Yeah.
That's when these issues arose.
Because now the youth would be told. So anyway, let's wait for Edwin Sifuna to come. When he joins us, we'll talk about this push for regional governments and why they think a political regional government is important. It's 26 minutes to 7 o'clock. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads and continue the conversation. Good morning.
97.9 Spice FM.
Well, as early as 6 a.m., already promising to be a full day. Looking at Langata Road, there is traffic and it's bumper to bumper all the way from the Langata Road barracks. And we don't know what's causing that right now, but we'll probably be able to find out in a short while. Thika Road, all the way from Safari Park Hotel, again, is gridlocked. Those who are heading towards Thika town and also towards Nairobi. So in and outbound, it starts at Roy Sambo, even further down. There was an accident involving a bus and a vehicle that crossed the extreme outer lane at GSU and just after the new flyover Nairobi bound. So there's traffic swelling around Roasters, Allsops as well. So Thika Road is the one for the books this morning, guys. You're going to ask for some patience already before that accident is cleared up. Mombasa Road already promising to be quite the traffic nightmare this morning, with traffic starting as far back as Syokimau this morning. Coming off Westlands, also not so bad this morning. It's moving. It's not as slow as it was yesterday, but let's see what it looks like in a short while. We'll get into traffic hour in about 20 minutes or so. So if you've not left, you might want to sit it out until later on, but we'll let you know what it looks like in a short while. Of course, experiencing some showers in certain parts of the city. We'll let you know what it looks like. Spice FM KE, reach us on Twitter. Give us a call on 0719 012 600.
24/7 around the world, non-stop. This is Spice FM.
Are you ready?
The Throwback Kings are at it again. DJ Pinye and DJ Nijo invite you for the second edition of Playback, a celebration of the music that defined the 80s and the 90s.
I'm taking you back. Throw your fist in the air if you feel this.
Bring your old friends and your new friends to the Gossip Ultra Lounge at the Lavington Mall on Friday, 31st of January and dance the night away to the music that defined an era. Limited tickets are available now on mook.com for only 1,000 shillings. No tickets will be sold at the venue. The party starts at 8 p.m. till dawn. Playback is about the show, the party, the vibe. Powered by Spice FM. Sugar, spice, and everything nice.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
The live stream is up.
Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
www.spicefm.co.ke. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Eric Latif. We have CT Muga and Nduoko. Our top story this morning, Ruto Palace coup on the Standard, right? Revolt as Ruto group resolves to go it alone. This is after the meeting yesterday at Naivasha. So because of 100 MPs met in Naivasha yesterday, and they were discussing, the whole issue of how this particular mrengo is going to go about popularizing the BBI, as all these politicians want to lie to us. They met and they agreed that they also, in addition to attending the BBI meetings being held by the other side, they'll also organize other meetings. So one of the things that they're trying to tell us is that we are not going to have parallel meetings. On the day that we have a BBI meeting that's being spearheaded by the ODM wing on the other side, we will not have another meeting. But the next day when they don't have a meeting, we'll have ours. And the day prior. So we'll just make sure that we'll have our own meetings also happening at the same time, where we'll send our own message. So one side will be hearing about regional governments and executive prime minister. The other side will be talking about their own things.
Hardly original. For the longest time, if you recall, opposition politics played this game too. You would have a national day. The opposition would have their own version of a national day and call it something else. Mm-hmm. The government would plan a rally. The opposition would plan something else to counter it. So, again, textbook opposition politics. So, again, this isn't new. But of significance, again, I have to question. It's not just, it's sensationalism at its very best. When you want to call it a palace coup. It isn't a coup. MPs attending a meeting.
Which they're probably
MPs
paid
attend
to
meetings
attend.
all the time. But Naivasha is an interesting place. You know, when there's a book called White Mischief, I think even a movie was made of it. And the activities that took place as narrated in that book took place in this place called Naivasha. I mean, most people don't seem to know that, but it does. But of significance, even when we were talking of the Constitution and we were going through the processes before Bomas, a lot of meetings took place in this Naivasha. This Naivasha is a watershed for many things.
It's a place.
This place, Naivasha.
So when a meeting takes place in Naivasha, then it has some significance.
Yes, the significance I'm speaking of.
It's going to be written off either in white, black mischief,
It's
red
not what
mischief.
you're seeing.
Yeah.
It's what comes after. We've had discussions about the powers of the Senate. And the meetings that determine these things took place in Naivasha.
Yep.
And what came out of it was almost no power for the Senate. And the luminaries who met in Naivasha to discuss these things were people who have great knowledge of the law.
And they ended up in the Senate.
Renowned people who ended up in the Senate. And how they ended up in the Senate, in a Senate with no powers after discussions in Naivasha.
Which they spearheaded.
Now we have yet another meeting which is supposed to be earth-shaking and earth-moving in Naivasha with a number 100 MPs meeting in Naivasha.
Yep.
Significantly in January.
Talking about very many things. So you don't think this is a palace coup?
It's not a palace coup. It's not a palace coup.
What would you characterize a palace coup to be?
A palace coup is if such a meeting as the one we are seeing in the papers was held and there was significant change in the structure of the leadership of the country. That's a coup. A coup often ends up with there being a change in leadership.
Right.
Otherwise, it is not a coup.
It's not a coup.
But in this
Essentially,
particular
you're trying to-
case, it's been called a coup because of what comes out of it. So we know the president and the opposition leader have a certain way of thinking. This is their mindset. This is what they're trying to push through the populace. We'll have a BBI, and this is what the BBI will stand for. Now it's emerging clearly that they'd like to bring in the conversation of having an executive prime minister or a parliamentary system, having the issue of regional governments coming in. Let's have another tier of government. So we have a national government, regional government, county government. This is among the things that are emerging out of that side. And now these guys are saying, all right, what we'd like to see coming out of it is not an executive prime minister, not regional governments, other things.
Right, but we don't see any kind of violence, wanting to.
But it's coming from somebody
We don't
who's
see
the
any kind
president's
of-
deputy.
Right, but we don't see any kind of push for a violent takeover from the seat of government, which essentially is what a coup is, and we don't see anything like that.
It's a
Of
peaceful
what-
coup.
It's a coup.
A
It has to be
coup,
an
it has to be
upheaval.
violent. There has
It
to
doesn't
be,
have to be violent.
There has to be
actually.
upheaval of
Doesn't
some
have to
sort.
be armed.
No,
There
it
has to
doesn't.
be some kind of overthrow.
Upheaval.
Upheaval.
Yes.
That has to be present. Otherwise, coup completely loses its
Latest
meaning.
example is Zimbabwe.
Was that a coup or was that not a
It was
coup?
a coup.
There you
That's what
go.
I'm saying, an upheaval. I was simply augmenting.
But it was just 2
Ndu's-
days of some certain things we see is military
Yeah.
coming
A
to
coup
the
could take
streets.
10 minutes. It doesn't
Military
ha-
coming to the streets. It's the same thing.
It could take 10
100
minutes.
MPs.
Yeah, but we don't see any kind of overthrow, any kind of upheaval to remove
what
power.
has changed?
We don't see
It's
that.
the beginning. It's the beginning.
No.
This is the beginning
A
of.
Eric,
coup
that's-
is not a process. It's
We-
a one-time thing.
No, it's not necessarily.
No.
It's not a
Eric,
process.
It's not necessarily a
It
one-time
can't
thing,
be a
Ndu.
coup if there isn't that upheaval.
It's not
That
possible.
change.
This is
Then
an
it's not a
upheaval.
coup. It's not an
It's
upheaval.
it's not.
In January, MPs meeting in Naivasha. It's an MPs meeting in Naivasha. It is
Yeah,
not
but
a
what
coup.
is the essence of that meeting? What's the reason why they are meeting?
People
That
are
is where the issue of
expressing
a
an
coup comes
alternate
in.
view that they've been expressing all along and saying things they've been saying all along. It's
And
just now
then-
that the group is
And
bigger.
at the same
and
time,
then
you
they-
have
Yes.
the same group of people who definitely is clamoring for realignment and clamoring for relevance in the next wave
It's the
of
same.
politics.
It's the
that
same
we
way when
see.
you
That's
talk
what we're
about when you
seeing.
talk about the second revolution. If you think about revolutions, all the Bolsheviks and the other revolutions, they were violent. But our second revolution was not. But it was also not a one-day event. It was a process. It started with some agitation. If you can go all the way back to Raila being jailed and being held under house arrest.
First of all, detention.
All those
Forget
things,
the- yes.
detention, 8 years, all that was a journey towards the second liberation. And you can say that the second liberation took many years, but it came to life. We saw it. It was a process. It's the same thing. This thing, they're calling it a coup. So you can say the wrong word is a coup because
it's not wrong word.
The thing is that
it's not wrong word.
A coup would be a coup. It takes over. It happens at night, and then in the morning
if it was
somebody
lay
is dead.
people having a discussion and use the word coup, it's excusable. In the media, they know exactly what that word means, and they know exactly the import of it. It's a misrepresentation of what is
misplacement, definitely,
of what
is actually happening.
Yeah, but you guys are watering it down like it's nothing. It's not nothing.
But
That's
I'm
what
not
saying.
watering it down. I'm merely describing it. It's a large meeting of MPs in Naivasha. That's what it is.
That's not what it is.
What is it, Eric?
It's a large meeting in Naivasha that represents something.
What?
It represents a direct opposition, a vocal opposition to a certain stand that's been taken by the leadership. The leadership in this case being the president and the opposition leader. This is the direction that they're taking, and the deputy president's people are saying this is not the direction we're going to take. We're not going to support this direction. We're going to push for a different direction, and we'll use the same mechanism that you're using.
How many MPs do we have in Parliament, Eric?
340 something. You've got more than a third who met.
No, excuse me.
Yes.
If we have 300 MPs and 100 meet.
173 MPs.
Yes, it is. It is.
More than a third.
Yes, it's still not a coup.
More than a third of MPs met.
It's still not a coup.
Yeah, you don't need many.
Eric, for there to be a change that represents a coup, you actually have to see something significant changing. There have been people who have been opposed to the BBI. There have been people who have been aligned to the DP. There have been people who've been aligned to the ODM leader, Raila Odinga. There have been people who've been aligned to the president. There is nothing new in this scenario. What is new is the number of MPs who've attended this meeting.
No, come
That's
on.
it.
You guys are being dishonest. For
Please
real.
explain to me in detail the part of
This
dishonesty.
dishonesty that where it's coming into
The
play.
dishonesty here is that you're refusing to acknowledge the fact that, yes, the deputy president and the Tanga wing have been opposed to
We are denying that, but that's what we've been saying.
No,
That's what they-
hold on.
uh-huh.
They've been opposed to some of this, right? Now they've come
Some of
together.
what exactly?
Some of the ideas contained in the BBI deliberations happening in the country. Now they've come together, 173 of them. They've met and they've discussed and they've said, this is how we are going to make sure that that idea does not see the light of day, does not get support. So we are going to campaign against it.
Okay.
So this is the beginning of that journey, where we have a direct, straight opposition to a certain stand that has been taken by the leadership of the country.
So
Yeah, so this is the beginning of a coup. This is the beginning of a revolt. The nation calls it a revolt. The standard calls it a coup. Palace coup.
oh my lord.
You know,
Taking over the whole
by
of
definition, really, a palace coup is a non-violent overthrow. That's what it actually is.
Yes.
But that thing has been overthrown. This is the point I'm trying to say.
What has been overthrown exactly?
Nothing.
Nothing has been overthrown. It remains as it was yesterday.
It's
It
a
remains
beginning.
as it was the day before.
It's
it's
the
not a
beginning.
coup.
Then it's not
Then
a
a
coup.
coup.
It's a beginning.
No, a coup is
Just
a coup.
because-
It takes
Listen,
place. It's
come
finished.
on.
Leadership has to change for it
For
to
a
be
coup
able
to have happened, leadership must be overthrown. No,
No.
it's basic. It's not even
No.
an argument or involving emotions.
It is
Eric.
not an argument.
It's
It
a
is a
basic
simple use of
definition.
logic.
No, exactly. Which
When-
you should apply
when
in
the
this case.
first- when the first soldier-
When a coup happens, governments,
That is the end of the
sitting
process.
authority
You see, you're
is
looking at it at the
overthrown.
end of the process. And I'm telling you, from the very beginning of a coup to the end of the coup, it's a coup. When the first soldier walks out of the
Eric,
barracks
those
and
are normally
shoots-
called coup attempt.
No, not attempt.
They're not coups.
Not attempt. Not attempt. When the first soldier walks out of the barracks and shoots in the air, the coup is in process. Until the very end, when the new leadership comes and sits in and announces over the radio that I am now your new leader, that is still a coup. Throughout that process, it's a coup. You can't say
Okay,
until
so
the
this coup of
president-
yours,
No, no, no.
this is your coup.
According to
This is
Eric,
your coup
according
now.
to Eric,
Your coup now,
an
Eric.
egg is a chicken in the making. Okay, so essentially, when we eat boiled eggs every morning, we're eating boiled chicken.
Boiled chicken.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
the import of his argument, and we're saying no. Until it hatches and walks, it isn't
not a chicken.
Oh, a fried egg is only an egg when it's on your plate and has salt.
Actually, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to have salt. Salt is now an additional preference. You could have pili pili, you could
So
have salt.
when it's still in the frying pan, it's not a fried egg.
No, it's a frying egg.
It's frying.
And what are you doing?
Oh no,
frying-
the egg is a constant here. The coup in this discussion is a constant. So it either has happened or it
has not.
If it's in the process, it's being attempted.
It has started.
They're still attempting.
Yes.
Okay, so
Not
attempted
attempting.
palace coup.
It has started. This is the beginning.
So they're going to overthrow government. That's what you're saying. At
this
the end
is
of
the
the day,
beginning.
this administration is going to be
you-
overthrown.
But that's what a
by-
coup is, Eric.
That's what a,
So what you're
that
saying
is what
is
a
that
coup
myopic.
is.
So
That is
what you're
a coup
saying is
It's
that
not
the
myopic
meeting,
in
the
any way,
meeting
shape, or
in
form.
Naivasha
That is what a coup
is intended to overthrow the government.
Yeah, that's what you're saying. They're going to overthrow the government because
is
a
it-
coup,
is
by
it-
definition, is with an intent to overthrow government. That is what it is. You can't run away from it. That's
What
what
did
it
you tell
is.
us a palace coup is
That's what it
again?
is. A soft form of the same.
It's a non-violent.
Violent
Usually,
coup.
it involves people who are within the government taking over power.
So if you can now move what you've said and you say now, if this is a coup according to what you've said, so the Tanga MPs and all these other rulers,
planning to
what
overthrow
their
the
intent
government.
is to overthrow the government.
To
Based
overthrow
on what
the-
you've
it's
said.
It's to overthrow the thinking at the top.
No. It is
okay.
perfectly
It's
all
good.
right.
It's
It
good.
is perfectly
Yes.
all right. So
All
now
right.
we've moved from the
From
overthrow of the government
to overthrow the thinking of the government.
It's all
So
right.
it is, in this sense, a comprehensive coup.
So we shall spend the next 15 minutes arguing about semantics.
Actually,
But,
nothing wrong with it.
Nothing. Very
No,
okay.
no. Let's move on. So what else is contained in this revolt? So stop calling it a coup in the meeting.
I am not going to call it a revolt. It's a meeting
In the meeting.
of MPs, 178
Yes.
MPs.
What it
meeting.
represents.
It represents 178 MPs meeting. I mean, I thought that was obvious. And
And what are
discussing.
they discussing?
I don't know. It's you who understands it's a coup. Tell us, what are they discussing?
What would you like it to represent, Eric? Or what do you see it representing? Maybe you can help us in this
I've been
case.
talking about that. So what do you see it representing?
No, I've
I'm
asked you.
asking
No, I'm asking you because you
All
seem
right,
to
let
say
me
it's
ask
not
you
a
the same
meeting.
question I asked
Okay, Eric,
you.
let
Come
me
on.
You seem to say
respond.
it's not
I
a
asked,
meeting.
I asked you the question.
Since-
so this
all right,
178
what
MPs
they are-
meeting in Naivasha,
they
what
are-
does it represent in your opinion?
Actually, I don't have an opinion. I can only say what the papers have stated. To have should you say an informed opinion, I needed to have been either at the meeting or have read more than one article talking about
If you were at the meeting, it will not be your opinion. It will be
Oh no.
it will be telling us what happened at the
no,
meeting.
No. It would still be an opinion because meetings have more than one agenda at any given point.
Yeah, but you're part
People
of it.
coalesce. It doesn't really matter whether I'm part of it. The point I'm trying to make is attending a meeting simply gives me more information. That's all it does because I'm actually there.
And it fuels your perceptions.
Yes,
isn't it?
and I
So
can talk
in your
about
uninformed, very pedestrian opinion, C.T. Muga, what do you think this meeting yesterday represented?
this meeting.
From what you read
From what I read
and what you watched.
No, just right. I haven't watched it yet.
Okay.
This meeting represents a group of MPs who feel that the BBI, as it's currently being presented, doesn't agree or doesn't coalesce with their way of looking at the changes that this country needs. So they want to form, they already are a group, but they want to solidify this group and they want to air the views that they think are pertinent to the changes that they have in mind. And this will take form it'll take shape and will be formed by alternate rallies that they plan to have. That's how I read it.
And you, Ndu?
Well, definitely for me, I mean, I've always said I think there's definitely a clamor for relevance. There's also definitely a clamor to make sure that people are not left by the sidelines in this, what would be called race on this particular train towards the politics that we see. I think through all of this, whatever side you want to look at it, I think BBI then is just being used as a tool to fuel all of this. And I think that often having been seen as maybe left out at some part, which they've actually also talked about, being left out, they want to be involved in the process. And I think this was a meeting to just then align themselves. That's what I see.
Now, the unfortunate bit, I think, is that there's a team that's drawing money from the taxpayers whose job it is to drive this process. The Yusuf Haji-led team, the task force on the BBI, plus some other 30 experts that were, brought in to do this the exact job. They were meeting yesterday and they were talking about what they were going to do. They are going to do their own meeting. Theirs are going to be silent. Theirs are going to be, talking to the Wananchi. And then we have the political group that has taken over and is hogging all the limelight on the BBI, but not discussing the BBI from the point of what we have in the report, but discussing the BBI from the point of what they'd like to see in the report. Here we have a team that is left, you'll be wondering what will their relevance be at the end of this whole process. The Yusuf Haji-led team. Are they ever going to come and tell us now, this is what Kenyans want, and what Kenyans want will be based on what we know that Kenyans have told them? Or will it be what Kenyans want based on what the political class has told them? What do you think?
Many questions, of course, coming up, and I think that's something that, interestingly enough, there has been a lot of expression about. So really, at the end of the day, what is this document and what does it say and how is it going to help Kenyans? But I think, unfortunately, has been overtaken by a lot of political storm in this case, and people don't know the crux. What is at the middle? What is at the core of all of this? And unfortunately, from all indications, we're going to see all of this being blown over. Because at the end of the day, who's asking about the committee of experts and the work that they're doing? Who is asking that question? And in terms of their relevance, for sure, the question then comes up, how relevant then are they in all of this? And then will the importance of such be blown out the window? And I think that is something that is pertinent. It's important to want to give some attention to and think about at the end of the day. Because unfortunately, it's being in this whole cloud.
It's
we
all
don't
over,
see
right?
it. That's the part of the rain that we're not feeling.
You know, you asked what I think. You didn't ask my interpretation of it.
Voila.
Yes, my interpretation of it is if it's a group of politicians meeting, it is really quite simple. The interpretation of it is not difficult to figure out. They're negotiating.
And I keep coming back to say, look, there's some kind of relevance that must be sought and maintained, because you don't want to be left out of this. As a politician, seeing the way in which things are going, you would be myopic and actually quite unintelligent,
quite dense.
There we go. Dense, not to want to be seen to be part of what is going on.
What do you think they want in this negotiation?
What do politicians want?
When you go into a negotiation, you have a stand. You have something that you want. Yeah, you may cloud it with very many other things, but there is what is your irreducible minimum. What do you think is the irreducible minimum in this case?
Aside from having some extra money in your pocket, you need to figure out which side do I think will win. And beyond what I already have, I'm already an MP. What else can I actually get? What can I angle for that is better? If I were a politician, that's exactly how I would look at it.
Absolutely. And what kind of strategic alignment should I be making?
Openly, you'd have something that you want.
Of course, strategic alignments there are definitely
but
something.
That's what the alignments are all about. It's not just a question of me continuing to be
just
MP.
Strategic alignment. You see, the other side is very clear on what they'd like. They'd like some of their retiring governors to have a position. They'd like an executive prime minister position, a role, and they can see how they play a part in this. What would this other side be looking for?
Same. It's not.
But they're opposed to those.
No, they are not opposed. That's what I'm calling. I'm telling you, it's a negotiation. When politicians speak loudly about something, in many cases, they are simply negotiating. The louder I shout, presumably,
you'll hear me.
You don't just hear, you'll call me aside and say, Chief, please come and tell me what this problem, this thorn, where exactly is it pricking? That's the whole point. But you can't notice me if I don't make enough noise. So I will make enough noise for you to take notice and for you to call me.
No, like you see, the negotiation, for example, in the first round of our constitutional talks, there were two stands and there were clear, distinct stands. One side wanted a parliamentary system. Another side did not want a parliamentary system. And they were clear. So you can talk about, all the negotiations and everything, but it was clear that even if we're going to have a hybrid system, it's a hybrid of what I have come to the table with and what you've come to the table with. Let's find a way to have both of them accommodated. In this particular case, I don't think it's just people saying, where can I play in this? They have a stand. They've already seen.
You clearly don't understand politicians very well, do you?
I have seen them. I've studied them as well. I'm giving you a practical example.
They're an interesting breed.
When they were negotiating at that time, unless you're talking about a naive politician.
No.
If it's not a naive politician, then
the one thing
a
that
serious
happens,
politician will have a stand, will have something they're going for,
Eric,
and they will push for it.
I don't think there's anything like a naive politician. Believe me, if there's one field of endeavor where people catch up and learn in the quickest way possible, it's politics. You get the impression they don't even learn. They just sort of like imbue it. You breathe it in and you catch up quickly.
You jump into it.
And if you don't, you're out.
Quickly,
if you don't,
and
you're
you
out.
Understand.
Yeah.
You know the rules of the game. You know the rules of engagement. You understand it quickly. Otherwise, that's it.
Time will reveal to us what exactly is happening. And I think I'll be proven right. There'll be a position that will emerge as this is a clear, non-reducible minimum for me. And this is what I want in it. as the negotiations happen. It's coming up to 7 o'clock. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Our guest for the next hour in the hot seat is Edwin Sifuna, the ODM Party Secretary General. We'll be talking about BBI and especially what ODM's agenda and strategy is in the ongoing BBI conversation around the country. Good morning. 7 o'clock.
Spice up your life.
All
Traffic.
right, let's look and see if anything has changed much. We have now Westlands joining the foray, James Gishu Road, heavy traffic. Unfortunately, yet another accident there, and that means that inbound and outbound, we have a problem as well. Okay, looking within the city now, Lenana Road, and then joining with Valley Road today is chock-a-blocks, heading then towards Kenyatta Avenue. That's not happening either. Thika Road traffic is so bad this morning. We're not able to move at all. Trying to get to the Pangani underpass is not happening anytime soon. We still have that bumper-to-bumper situation on Langata Road all the way from Bomas. Same thing with Bagavi until the Ngumo turn-in. This means that getting off as an alternate is not happening either. A bus has broken down on Bagavi Way, and this means that anybody moving in is going to have some problems. Kiambu Road, and then, of course, trying to join to the Thika Superhighway, we have a problem there as well. Right now, you can use the Southern Bypass getting off Mombasa Road, but that is likely to be chock-a-blocked soon because everybody's using that as an option. We'll see what it looks like around the city in a short while. Take a look at Kisumu, Mombasa shortly as well. Spice FM KE on Twitter, 0719-012-600. Give us a call. Let us know what you see. Keep moving, everybody, as best we can.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Coming up to 4 minutes after 7 o'clock. Good morning and how are you doing? Thank you very much for tuning in. This is Spice FM and the show is The Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We're broadcasting from Nairobi, 94.4. We're in Mombasa, 87.9. Call your friends in Kisumu and tell them to tune in. 102.5, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 Eldoret, 90.9 in Nyeri, 97.7 in Malindi. Live streaming on www.spicefm.co.ke. We're on Facebook, Spice FM KE. We are also on Twitter at Spice FM KE and YouTube, Spice FM KE. On the hot seat this morning, Edwin Sifuna, ODM Party Secretary General. Good morning. Happy New Year. It's good to see you. You know, until June,
yes,
we can keep telling each other Happy New Year.
No, I think every time you see someone for the first time in the year, you just tell them
Happy New Year.
Yeah, so Happy New Year to all of you. It's good to see you again. I'm happy to be here.
Karibu
sana.
Asante.
Of course, you are very busy right now. You as a party, you are involved in the BBI conversation.
Absolutely.
You are also right there trying to prepare and plan for party national elections, which, as we understand, that you've pushed them, you've postponed them for a while, so that you can focus on just one thing, right?
Absolutely.
Ensure that this one thing is delivered and delivered well.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about the BBI conversation going around the country. Report came out. The last time you were here, you told us what that you liked what you'd seen in the report. It had not contained everything that you as a Secretary General and the party leadership had presented to the BBI task force, but you were going to engage.
Yes.
And then we've seen the political rallies, so to speak, happening. Major ones, we've seen one happening in Kisii, Kakamega, last weekend in Mombasa. This weekend, where are you going?
This weekend we're supposed to be in Kitui.
So we're going to Eastern.
For the lower Eastern.
The lower Eastern part,
Yeah.
and then you have an entire itinerary up to
Absolutely.
the end of February,
Absolutely. Yes.
where you have all these conversations.
Yeah.
When you started these talks, there were, of course, those other voices that came up, and the voices were, all right, so we are seeing now the politicians gathering people together in a group and having rallies and political leaders talking to people, and then coming up with resolutions and saying this is the declaration, the Kisii declaration, Kakamega, the Mombasa one. We saw, for example, the governor of Meru saying, look, let's safeguard this baby and ensure that the baby is delivered in the right way and not taken over by political interest. Yesterday, we saw the U.S. ambassador to Kenya, Kyle Makata, actually using the word hijacking and saying there's fear that the political class could be hijacking the BBI talk. So let's just put that to you straight, because you are the main organizers of this BBI talk.
Yeah.
Is it the political class trying to hijack our baby?
It's absolutely ridiculous for people to suggest you can hijack a vehicle you are driving. You cannot hijack a plane you're steering yourself. I wonder to myself at which particular part or stage of this particular process were politicians not in charge. ODM has been in charge of this process from inception. We are the ones that have protected this baby that people are talking about. From King Herod, who had already issued an edict to kill all the babies because they heard that the baby was coming to take their kingdom. We are the vanguards of this particular process. We have protected it, we have steered it in. If it were not for people, especially the ODM party, we would not even be talking about a report, Latif. So I think it is disingenuous for people to claim that we are taking over a process. We are the owners of this process. We have been with it from the start. It was initiated by our party leader. We have walked the path with him even when there were doubters about what the process is about. You remember at some point we were being accused of having found a back route to parliament. Sifuna, who's talking to you today, is not in cabinet. I am still the SG of the opposition party.
You're not
At
yet
some
a
point-
roving
No, I'm not.
roving cabinet secretary.
I wish
no
I was.
portfolio.
I wish I was. I drove myself to your studios this morning. I have no security from the state. I mean, I'm not in government in any form or shape. They told us that the report that was going to be released was somehow an ODM written report, and they were talking before the report was done. We told them to be patient and read the report. Suddenly, when the report came out, they said, they were happy with the report. We are now in the process of validating a report, and validation essentially means you look at the report and see the things that are in the report, whether your views were captured, and you say they were captured or they were not captured. In the first meeting in Kisii, there were very interesting discussions. I was there, of course, as an observer, as a national leader. I want to hear what the people in the region were talking about. There was a member of parliament from Kuria West who stood up and said, as a people of Kuria, we have read this report. We told this gentleman that we are not very happy with the political representation within Migori, that we would prefer, as the people of Kuria, to have our own county. We don't see that
Contained in the report.
contained in the report. In Kakamega, there were views. They were saying, for instance, during the meeting at the prior meeting in Bungoma, the teacher stood up and said, we told this committee that we would want a teacher, a representative of a teacher, to be one of the commissioners in the TSC. We have not seen it in the report, and it was actually adopted as one of the recommendations. The young people said, we saw a recommendation, for instance, that young entrepreneurs will get a 7-year tax holiday. We would like that tax holiday extended to people in employment, because not all of us are entrepreneurs. Some of us are in the arts, some of us are in sports, some of us are in formal employment, and that if you extended this, so it is a process of validation.
Mr.
of the report.
Sifuna, these views that you speak of, were
Yes.
they being preferred during what seemed to me like a rally, or were they before? At what point did they take place?
I think the three meetings that we've had, all of them have taken the same format. There is a meeting of leaders and opinion shapers for representing all sorts of industries, all sorts of interests, civil society, all sorts of interests that happens prior to the meeting. In Kisii, for instance, there was a dome that was set up. We had about 3,000 people who actually now engaged. This is where, for instance, those views I was giving you about Migori were brought out, and then resolutions are agreed. Because what not necessarily resolutions as priority areas for the region, so that people come up and then we say, because it is impossible, and we accept it is impossible to have proper discourse in a rally where there is feedback from the people in the crowd. So there is a meeting that precedes the rally. In Kisii, it happened. In Western Kenya, we went to Nzoia Guest House, and this is where that feedback was coming from.
Again,
and
another 3,000 people in Nzoia Guest House.
Yes, and I was there myself. And you could see, for instance, in the resolutions or the priority areas that were read out by the governor in Kakamega, the issue of a representative of teachers in the TSC commission
It's
was
captured
actually,
there.
yes, it found its way into the resolutions.
What
of
is
the
the
region.
representation in those meetings?
In the coast,
What's the
call
composition of those?
a broad section of society. So you have representatives from the youth, women, people with disabilities.
How are they selected?
These are people who are known, Omwami. If I wanted to have a representation of people from the media, if I call Eric Latif to represent the Standard Group, I have called people from the Standard Group. So it is not something that is difficult to do. Opinion leaders and shapers in every community.
Is it by invitation or is it an open
It is
forum?
by invitation. Yes. So these leaders
So it's
are
possible
invited
for you to choreograph this.
It's not
basically,
possible to choreograph.
By looking at
and
Latif, you want to invite people who host breakfast radio shows, and you look at and see, C.T. Muga, Eric Latif, Nduoko. I think Eric thinks more like the way I think, so I'm going to invite Eric and leave out Ndu and CT.
And let me tell you, if you want to see that there's objective criteria that goes into selecting those people who attend those meetings, you look at the output. Because really, we are not going there to take a census of who supports the BBI, who doesn't. Look at the beautiful, beautiful resolutions that came out of Mombasa, for instance. They have laid out an array of proposed solutions to the problems that bedevil them on the issues of absentee landlords, expired leases of land, the court cases on court orders on evictions that are existing, the issue of the port. They're saying all port operations must be brought back. They have brought about the idea of regional authorities to be able to manage regional issues. I mean, these are resolutions that you can tell have originated from the people of the coast who actually know where the shoe is pinching. So in the resolutions, you can see the objectivity in terms of the invitees.
Is this not the same work that the committee of experts essentially should be doing? All
There
this
is no
information
committee of
that's coming.
experts.
There's a task force.
There's a task force.
There is no task force.
The task
There's a
force.
steering committee.
All right,
These are not
all right.
semantics.
Let's call it what. All right,
let's
fine.
call it
Let's
a
call it.
steering
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
Let's call it
It's
a steering committee. Let's
committee.
call it a
It's
steering
a
committee.
steering
It is a steering
committee. Yes.
committee. Is this not the same work? These resolutions that you say, for example, that came out of Mombasa.
Absolutely.
Is this not what the steering committee essentially then should be
Actually,
doing?
why don't we ask a question? What's the steering committee supposed to do?
I think to understand the role of the steering committee, you have to look at the Gazette notice under which they were, freshly constituted. Their job is to conduct such meetings, to do validation of the report as well. And this, for instance, the resolutions of the priority areas that have been identified by the regions are not coming to ODM. And they are going to that steering committee.
So are you helping the committee? You're helping the committee?
In fact, we are working with the committee in Western Kenya, for instance. We handed the resolutions to Amos Wako, who was there in his capacity as a member of that steering
So
committee.
it is an accepted dalliance now that's happening now.
Absolutely, because this process is for everyone. And I'm telling you that processes of law review and constitutional review are political processes. The impetus and the push will not come from experts, because these are not people who can convene meetings the way that we can.
So there's
we are the
no
political
jumping,
mobilizers.
So there's no jumping the gun. That's
No, there is
going
no jumping the
whatsoever,
gun.
according
There
to
is
you.
jumping the gun. Let's
According
be
to
honest
you,
with
you're saying there's no
ourselves here,
jumping the
Edwin.
gun here, that we say, okay, if there's a steering committee who's supposed to be going around the country and doing certain things, then now we have these rallies that are happening regionally, and they're going to be happening for the next, 6 weeks or odd, right? Then what is the work of this committee?
To add on to that, just before we respond, we saw the steering committee meeting yesterday, and Amos Wako said, all right, so we are going to go around the country and hold smaller meetings with the people so we can hear what the people are telling us.
If I read that the Gazette notice
of
properly,
roles?
and I challenge anyone to tell me where it was said that the work of validation of a report is exclusively the preserve of this steering committee. It is nowhere. And as Kenyans, there's nothing that precludes us. This is a political process that we own. There's nothing that precludes us from having conversations with Kenyans. When we left Bomas, just a minute. when we left Bomas, it was agreed that we must now take this report to the people and have a conversation. I have never seen
as parties. It was agreed
no,
as parties,
as stakeholders,
as
stakeholders in the political process. I have seen our friends from the so-called Tangatanga group have said these meetings, even after we invited them, treated them very well to VIP treatment. They have decided that this process doesn't work for them. They are going to hold their own parallel meetings, and it is their constitutional right, because if they feel that they can better explain what this process is and what it is about to their people, then really we have no objection. What we would have preferred is that because the hue and cry was that we needed a united front, nobody is opposed to this particular process, let's work together. We opened that door because at the end of the day, we have always held that there is nobody who has a monopoly of wisdom and knowledge about what we need to do or the solutions we need to proffer to the country. Let us have a conversation as one. And you see, one of the most interesting things, Latif, is you people never put this Tangatanga group to the task. When they say, oh, we don't like opposing views, then you are like, okay, the report is here. What exactly is this opposing view? What is the opposing view? In fact, in the proposals that have been made, what is it that you don't like, and which is this alternative view that you would have liked to prefer? As ODM and speaking as the Secretary General, we have appreciated what this process is about. We said after the joint NEC and PG meeting in December that we understand that this is a consultative give and take. We can have 1,000 views to give, but we understand that all our 1,000 views cannot find their way into the report, because we need to allow for other people to also give their views. So, for instance, on this issue of a prime minister, and I can see there is an eagerness by media and everybody else to tie the issue of the prime minister with ODM. I don't understand why, because when I read, like now, the Standard has said ODM pushes for new power structure, and sometimes I wake up and see the newspaper and I wonder, which ODM are they talking about? Because
the chairman is
I'm the Secretary General of ODM.
Those leaders are ODM leaders.
No. Let me tell you. You can put their names here. If I come here and proffer a position, you can say Sifuna has said that this is what he thinks. But for ODM to speak, it speaks after a meeting of its properly constituted organs. Then you say this is a party position. We gave a position in December, and
as
we
a
said
party.
Yes, as a party.
Let's go into a break and then we come out of it and we continue this conversation. We have Edwin Sifuna, the Party Secretary General of ODM. We're discussing the BBI, the ongoing sensitization rallies around the country. Is it a gimmick by political class to take over this process from the citizens of the Republic? That's what he's answering. So, of course, we'll also be opening up your conversation to you. Spice FMKE on Facebook and Twitter. Post your comments and questions to Edwin Sifuna. Good morning, 18 minutes after 7.
.9 Spice FM, Mombasa. 96.1 Spice FM, Kisumu. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Well, we continue with the conversation with Edwin Sifuna. Edwin, so you're telling us about, the party's position and the reason why you're having all these meetings now, as well as saying that you're helping the steering committee gather views from the people. Before, when the steering committee first went around the country, you told us that as a party, you called your leadership together in a room, you discussed this is what you'd like,
yes,
and you presented that unified position as a party
absolutely
to the steering committee.
Yes.
And during that time, there was no political noise, so to speak, because let's be honest, there is political noise now. There was no political noise at that point. It was a very peaceful and, so to speak, sober process of view gathering by the steering committee.
I don't know where you
around
were.
the country.
I don't know where you were.
Around the country. It did not have this kind of, amplified level of political noise. So yes, there was a lot of agitation on the ground, but like you're saying, it was very organized. Like you called your people, you sat and you agreed this is a position we want to present. Now they've come up with a report, and they have also been asked, go around the country and validate this report and see what people feel and what people want. Even before they had been gazetted with a new fresh mandate, you had already bolted and organized your first meeting.
But Eric, I don't understand. Bolted how? The ODM, these political parties, are not the steering committee. If they choose to have meetings, how are we saying that it somehow collides or it obfuscates what the committee is about?
And this is where honesty is called into place.
That's
right?
what we are saying.
I'm asking the question because I don't understand.
This is where honesty is
a
called into
political
place.
process is just a political process.
This is where honesty is called into place. If you let me now answer your question.
I actually haven't asked a question. I was making a statement.
You're asking where is the issue.
You know, you're the one who's asking the
I'm
question.
asking the
Eric.
question to Edwin, and then you interjected by saying, well, you don't see where the problem is. And I'm answering you now where the problem is as
Where is the
I
problem?
finish the
Where's the
question to Edwin. Here is the issue. Before this steering committee had been gazetted, you had already started organizing these meetings around the country and saying what you'd like to see in the BBI report. Right? So by that time, there was no organ to which you were going to present your views. True?
The organ was there.
It hadn't been gazetted.
Gazettement is
Had not happened.
Let me
Yes.
tell you,
Formalization of the
I want to speak
the
as a lawyer.
formalization of it had not happened.
The High Court has already determined what the import of a gazettement is. The appointment is not made in the Gazette.
It's
The
in
appointment
the
has already been
announcement.
made by the president.
In the
This is an
announcement.
administrative process.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the political issue that
But the
that
issue
I'm
of the
raising
honesty, I want to hear the question on honesty. Where is your problem with the honesty?
is the politics behind it. You knew very well, and everybody understands very well, that when you start having these political conversations going around the country and the politicians being in the forefront, it sort of takes the steering committee to the back burner. It brings the political issues to the fore.
There is
And
nowhere.
this is what is happening.
There is nowhere in the Gazette that it says that the work of validation of a report is the exclusive preserve of this steering committee. Number two, they are a steering committee. They are not the ones to run the process. They are just steering the process. So if the political class, for instance, after we left Bomas, it was agreed, we will take this report and have conversations with Kenyans, nobody prescribed the format or the form of those conversations. And we as a political class are doing it the best way that we know. Are you saying that there is no value? You know, that is the question you have to address, Eric. Is there value?
I want to understand this element of honesty that Eric is talking about.
Yes.
What do you mean, Eric?
The politics, the noise around it. When the president was saying, don't go tangatangaing, let's not focus on politics. Let's not have a lot of political noise around the country. Let's focus on the main issues. There's exactly what he meant. And we all know what he meant.
Let me talk about honesty. Let me talk about honesty. You see, what we need is honesty, even in the people in the media. Because when I come to these talk shows, we had a conversation with you even last night about even the way that you frame issues. Because it appears that the media only regurgitates the propaganda and the negativity that is directed at this particular process. I will give you the classical example. On this issue of a prime minister, everybody in the media seems to be pushing it to appear like it's an ODM agenda. And then they come and claim that the process is being hijacked by politicians and they are fronting only their issues. We have said that this is a consultative give and take. That we understand that politics is persuasion and it will remain persuasion. If we saw, for instance, when we presented our views, that an alternative system of government to what we have is what would work best for us, we presented those views. They were not adopted in the form in which we presented them.
Yep.
We accept that we are not the final say on the solutions to the problems facing the country. Then don't force it on us. The views that are coming from the people are coming from the people. But everyone is desperate to make it appear that ODM is pushing for a powerful prime minister's position.
Is ODM supporting this push?
Which push?
For
We are
prime
supporting the conversation. We are
Okay.
saying, just a minute, let me speak. We are subservient to the people as a political party. What the people propose and what the people want is what ODM will stand for. We have given proposals. We gave the proposal, for instance, on reconstitution of the IEBC. We are very happy that it was accepted, that we disband the current IEBC and we go back to the IPPG format. We have been the champions of saying we need to increase resources allocated to the devolved units. We are happy that Kenyans share that
So
view.
you're okay in claiming credit for that?
No,
But
that's
you don't
what
want to claim credit for the prime
listen,
minister's position.
I'm not claiming credit. I am saying, reading the report, we can see a lot of ourselves in the report,
What
and
you
we are
proposed
happy.
is there.
And on the issue of
You
the prime
proposed-
minister,
you
just a
proposed
minute,
the prime
Eric,
minister
you need
position.
you need to let me finish. We accept that this is a consultative give and take. we were proposing, for instance, 45% minimum to the counties. The report is saying anywhere between 35 and 50. We're saying, okay, it is within the
band.
The band that we were talking about.
Yes.
We proposed that we need to have a system of government, a purely parliamentary system of government, the way that it was proposed under the Bomas process. And you will remember, the Bomas process was a people-driven process. ODM was not even in existence then. Yeah?
Yes.
So don't say that this is an ODM thing. But we have seen that they have incorporated views from other people and somehow diluted the idea that we gave. We say it's fine. We as ODM are not averse to taking power in its current form. It's not as if you give us this imperial presidency,
You
we
will
will
not.
shake with fever and die. No. We will thrive
Is
even under
ODM
this particular
so
system.
a
But
direct-
we are
then a
saying,
direct question,
we are saying
Edwin, a direct
that
question.
there are proposals to better our lot.
So-
they don't have to be accepted in the form in which you present them. We accept that they can be enriched, varied, and so on and so
But
forth.
Mr. Sifuna, what would be wrong if ODM was pushing its own agenda?
There is no problem. That's what we are saying. But you understand the accusation. The accusation that politicians are taking over this conversation is because of the political suggestions. It's because of political suggestions. So they go to the dais and say, they are only talking about positions for themselves. Sifuna wants to be deputy prime minister. But we are saying there are other things in that report that actually for us, we want to give prominence. For instance, we have read the chapter on shared prosperity. We were in Western Kenya. On the same day, just the day before, we saw a full-page advertisement in the newspaper by the National Highways Authority, for instance, saying they're going to build 500 kilometers of road in central Kenya, the so-called Mau Mau roads. And we said, fantastic. The report says no one region should be able to suffer just because development is being taken to another region. We would have loved to receive as well 500 kilometers of road in Western Kenya, and I believe the other regions would love that as well. So that the chapter on shared prosperity for us as a party, we actually believe that if the recommendations therein, where even when it comes to appointment of people into cabinet, the permanent secretaries, you can be able to see regional representation.
So as a party, you're championing that?
Absolutely.
As
That
a
is,
party,
that
are you
is
championing-
one chapter that I can say, even if it is thrust upon us,
Yes.
we will take
will
it.
take it.
But
You will
yes,
love it.
Sifuna-
But
And
these
you're
other
champion-
conversations
and you're championing it.
you're trying to put it in our mouths, yet we have
As a
very loud
party-
mouths and we
as
can
a
speak for
party-
ourselves.
So as a party, are you championing or not? Are you championing the executive prime minister position? As a
That
party.
was our proposal, but we are saying we are listening to other people because we do not have the monopoly of wisdom.
Right.
We have said
In all
that
proposals, of course, you listen to other
in
people,
our
unless
view,
you're saying this is the
in
only
our
one.
view, no, just a minute. In our view, if we went back to the original Bomas draft and the structure that was proposed in Bomas, we would be happy because that was a result of a people-driven process. We understand that we will not get everything, but we are saying we have the powers of persuasion. We are still talking to people. We are still trying to bring people around to be able to see things from our standpoint.
These views that are
If we don't get there, it's fine with us because we understand at the end of the day, this is
It's a
not about
negotiation.
ODM.
Yes.
Now, these suggestions or the views that are coming from people, I mean, obviously going around the country and you're hearing from people pre-rally consultative meetings that are taking place.
Yes.
What happens to this information and to whom does it go?
That information is being submitted to the steering committee because it is the
By
responsibility.
ODM as a party?
No.
Who?
By the organizers of these consultative meetings. They are not organized by ODM. I have told you
Who
that
are the organizers?
Who are the organizers?
the organizers
of these
are the
meetings that
regional
taking
governors.
place?
The regional governors themselves are organizing. It just so happens to be a beautiful coincidence that in all the places that the BBI has gone,
So
ODM
far.
is the dominant party.
Right.
When we go into Ukambani, it will be somebody else. You will not start saying it's CCM that has organized the meetings in
So then
Ukambani
do you
because
then bear,
because,
do you then
Mutua
bear,
is as
do
the
you
governor.
then bear the collective responsibility, Edwin, to then say from here, these views that have now been expressed, collected, are we making sure that they're reaching the right place to make sure that this is what the people have
Let
said?
me tell you.
Because if you take the responsibility of going around and clamoring like this, then also the responsibility to make sure that it goes on to its expected end
Let me
is
tell
also
you,
quite as important.
I don't know what you mean by taking responsibility to ensure, because I have told you that even at the inception process, when the team was going around the country collecting views, we gave our views, and I have said here, not all of our views were incorporated. So even these ones, we are taking. What I can assure you is that they will be received by the Haji committee. if that's what you're asking, they will be received.
They will end up there eventually.
As to whether they will end up in the final report or draft or whatever it is, that is the preserve of the Hajj Committee. That is not our job.
You know, Mr. Sifuna, one of the problems that we in the media have with regards to what politicians say is this. One, they say a great deal. And very often, if we were to go by precedents, a lot of what they say doesn't actually see the light of day in terms of action. Now, so when you explain what you're explaining as well as you're explaining it, I'm inclined towards believing you.
Yeah.
But then I have to ask the question.
Yes.
How much of it will actually see the light of day in terms of action?
You know, Muga, it's a good question. But you see, for me, I can only talk about the things that are within my powers, the things that are within my control. If I have told you, for instance, that we did issue or give certain proposals, not all of them found themselves in the report. You want me to sit here and assure you that the product of these consultative meetings, as they are, all of them will find their way. Some of those things are very tough to deal with. And in fact, it is good that my brother spoke about honesty. The level of dishonesty that we saw from the likes of Murkomen in Mombasa, for instance, is shameful, and nobody's calling them out for it. I didn't get an opportunity to speak, but for instance, if the people of the coast have identified the SGR as the reason why the economy of the region is dying, then instead of the people who are responsible, like now we have owned the BBI process, we are the fathers. If anything goes wrong, you ask me. The fathers of the SGR are people like Murkomen. Instead of them coming there to explain to the people what is this wisdom they had at that particular point. Because when we were saying that the feasibility study of this particular railway points to an unsustainable project, that it is not going to be able to give back to the economy as much as they are telling us. They said, the opposition does not like development. And then he stands there and says, it is time for us now to take action and stop talking. You are the purveyors of this SGR. You are the owners of this SGR. Come and tell the people that you are sorry, that you are wrong, that you are going to do all it takes to return the port back to their people, or alternatively, carry the people from Mombasa and take them where you took their port for them to work there. But you can't say, and then the dishonesty is that, ODM is quiet. ODM has abandoned its people. Mombasa is an ODM zone. We don't hear Raila. We don't hear Sifuna. I'm like, boss, you have allowed a thief into the house past your watchdog. The dog saw you walking with the thief into the house. Then you want to accuse the dog for not barking.
Let's take a
it
short
saw
break.
You with the thief.
Let's take a short break and take a look at what's happening on the roads, the traffic. It's 28 minutes to 8 o'clock. Edwin Sifuna, ODM Secretary General, is in the studio. He's waxing honesty. Let's call him out where he also becomes dishonest. It's 27 minutes now to 8. Good morning.
Spice FM. Nyeri. Traffic.
Right, definitely quite terrible on Langata Road this morning. We saw the accident that happened just before the Bombers of Kenya, and that is definitely contributing to what we see today. 30 minutes from Oil Libya to the bypass. Unfortunately, it is not moving. Thika Road jam starts from Safari Park Hotel, slowly moving down in towards town, and that accident that happened there this morning has been cleared away. Avoid Lunga Lunga interchange and outer ring if you can, because the traffic is not moving at all. The eastern bypass, Utawala inbound, is slow but moving, though it's raining. Police are trying to do a good job to clear people off the road there. All right, we'll see what it looks like in different parts. Coming off Wayaki Way also is not so bad today. Mombasa Road, of course, bumper to bumper, all the way from Cabanas, leading all the way down to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout, moving extremely slowly this morning. The roads are slippery, so please be careful. Approach where you are going with caution, especially when you see heightened traffic. Spice FM KE on Twitter, or give us a call 0719 012 600.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. done right. 94.4 Spice FM,
We
Nairobi.
are in the studio with Edwin Sifuna, the Secretary General of ODM Party. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. My name is Eric Latif, CT Muga and Nduoko. The live stream is up, Spice FM KE on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke. You can post your comments and questions to Edwin Sifuna on those digital platforms. Edwin, so we're talking about ODM, what ODM is championing and what the people also are asking for. What is ODM's position on regional governments?
I think the conversation is ongoing, even within the party. I do not think that it has concretized so that we are able to say that this is a position. There are arguments for and against it. For instance, there are those who say we have seen challenges when counties are, trying to undertake projects that are cross-cutting across counties. You have seen them by just the force of nature being forced to come together to have these regional blocks to be able to address some of those challenges. And the proposal was that there needs to be a legal framework to be able to make it easy for them to collaborate. For instance, I saw there was a push to open a regional bank, for instance, in Western Kenya. And the MCAs in the respective counties were a bit stuck under which law, which vote are they going to vote to allocate monies that are essentially county monies to a project that is a regional project. So there are challenges, my brother. There are roads that are classified as being under the county governments, and yet they straddle more than one county. Yeah, yes. I mean, so how do you or projects? For instance, if you're going to have a dairy plant or something major like a banana processing plant, you probably just need one in one region to be able to harvest all the produce from that particular region so that it makes economic sense. So people are stuck. How do we proceed? And the proposal was to have a legal framework within which these counties could collaborate. This is a cry that I am sure everyone has heard.
So it's for the economic
absolutely.
benefits.
The problem arises when people start saying, politicians want to create positions for themselves. And instead of looking at the problem and saying, Eric, it is actually possible.
Edwin, are they
This
not
is not true?
Are they not
No. Let me tell you. You see, people are refusing to think. Because one of the proposals, you can look at a problem and proffer a solution that actually does not result in an additional position being created. It is possible. For instance, we proposed that instead of having a regional assembly, why can't this, because you see these matters that are cross-cutting, they don't arise on a day-to-day basis.
Yep.
So why can't the elected MCAs in the regions from time to time sit and constitute themselves as a regional assembly without any additional pay, without any additional emoluments, for them to be able to pass resolutions regarding these projects that are cross-cutting? It is possible without saying, let us have now a fresh regional assembly or a fresh regional governor. Is it not possible even to have the governors elected in the areas? Once you are elected, you sit down and you say, we're going to elect a chair.
Is there another
for the
way
region.
There is another way.
That's what I'm saying. Instead of us having the conversation, you demonize the whole idea by saying people want to create positions
Because
for themselves.
that's what is coming out.
No. Because that's what you want to see. You see,
It's
even
not what we want to see.
No,
It's
no,
what
no.
we see.
You like to sell controversy, Latif.
Whether
There is
we
nothing
want to see it or not, it's
that
there.
the media will ever clothed positivity. And the classic example, and the media has never apologized for this. After our PG and NEC, the Prime Minister's speech was made public. My statement as the resolutions of the NEC was published statement publicly. But the following day I wake up and the nation is saying, ODM pushes for powerful prime minister. The Standard is saying ODM abandons its quest for powerful prime minister. You are misinforming the public because that is what you thrive in. You should be able to tell the truth when you talk about honesty, Eric. But on this one, at least the Standard was the one that was accurate. This other newspaper decided to go. They decide on a story.
Okay.
They decide on a story. Then they ask
Back
you,
to the question.
Sifuna,
The question
there's a
is not-
story I'm doing. What story are you doing? Just tell the story.
Back to the question. The question is regional governments, right? So you're talking about what we have currently county governments have come together and formed regional blocks.
Yes.
Economic blocks.
Yes.
And you're saying that in implementing some of the ideas that they're discussing for those economic blocks, they are meeting some challenges.
Yes.
And one of those challenges, one of the solutions that's emanating from that is having some regional form,
A legal framework
some legal
to
framework.
enable them to collaborate.
Now, is that legal framework a regional government, like the way we are saying?
It is one of the options. That's what we are saying.
And what is coming out now, for
Yeah.
example, in those two, for example, in Mombasa, I saw Governor Kingi saying that we're proposing to have 2 regional governments in the coast region,
Yeah.
upper coast and lower coast,
Yeah.
right? And that will have a regional governor. Why do you need to have a regional political office, regional governor, regional? If you have a regional governor, then what does that mean?
You
That
see,
means a regional executive.
Latif,
It means a
Latif,
regional assembly.
this is a conversation. The governor is profiling solutions as he sees them. Other people see things differently. Don't go and say that because Kingi has said he wants a regional governor, ODM wants a regional
That
governor.
is the resolution he was reading. Was he reading his
those
own
are
opinion?
the coast people.
All right.
It's not ODM. You should remember that
and
the
it goes-
resolution of a coast ODM, it was the coast region was as a result of a meeting of the people of the coast. Not all of them. Okay, 90% of the coast is ODM, but not all of them are ODM.
Are ODM.
Yeah, and by the way,
Kakamega
Latif, if you go
resolution
back,
had the same thing.
if you go back to the Bomas draft, and I told you the Bomas draft was produced before ODM was in existence.
Yes.
It had proposed 14 regional governments. That is a proposal from the people themselves.
Yes.
There is a problem they were trying to address. So you can demonize it.
Did it have a lower tier to that?
What do you mean
The
by
Bomas
lower tier?
draft. Did it have
There was a regional tier, and there were counties. Yes,
right?
absolutely.
And what was the arrangement in that? What was the structure?
What do you mean by the structure? They were above the counties, the regional governments,
With county assemblies and county
with
governors.
assemblies, and they were called who? They were not called governors. The regional premiers.
Regional
That was
premier.
the name that was used in the
Okay,
Bomas draft.
so the conversation is coming back again now at this particular point of the same formation of regional governments. Is it mirroring what was in the Bomas draft, or is it addressing
That's why I'm saying,
present challenges?
as it is right now, I have not seen a concretized position on what the form of the regional governments is going to take. People are spitballing. People are throwing out their ideas. You had what Governor Kingi has said. We have had other people say the same. One of the things that we are very clear on, Eric, is that we are not going to amend the constitution with anybody in mind. We are not going to amend it with the second-term governors in mind, so that we accommodate, or with Raila Odinga in mind.
Is that so?
That's what we are saying.
And we should believe it.
Absolutely. We should. Why would you not believe me?
Because
I have
we're
come here
politicians.
with nothing but truth.
Actually,
Because we don't believe politicians.
As the Secretary General of ODM, our inclination to believe you may be higher than if you had come here as an MP. Because, unfortunately, the truth quotient that our MPs tend to represent tends to be at a minimum.
But it's not fair to generalize. Even for you in the media, we have accusations against media, but we pick out. Even for me as a SG, I have made it the habit. I will not blanket condemn the media. If a journalist has given a fake story, you say, so and so, Eric Latif, this story today, you have pulled it out of the air, it doesn't exist.
It is true.
So even for you, I have met honest politicians. Maybe you should walk around with me. I'll show you one or two. They exist.
I also
They
know.
actually exist.
I also know. Often,
So-
what we're discussing here is a
Yeah.
representation.
Yeah.
If I come from a family of night runners, no one is going to ask if I'm a night runner.
Yes.
You're going to assume that all
They are
of
going
you
to
are.
assume I am a
Exactly.
night runner. Yes.
I want to,
Wouldn't you agree, Eric? I mean, wouldn't you agree, Edwin?
I don't know. I don't know. I am not in the habit of blanket,
generalizing.
generalization and blanket condemnation. But one of the things that I will also admit is that sometimes when these conversations are put in the table, there are elements of self-interest. People are looking to see how
it works for
this
them.
is going to work for me. What will I get out of it? And sometimes, because you want to carry everybody on board, you can entertain some of that self-interest as far as you can. But at some point, you will tell them, honestly
Yeah,
speaking, because the decision ultimately is the decision of the people of Kenya.
Now, if you go back to that decision
yes.
being the decision of the people of Kenya,
Yes.
I see there's so many different storms, so many balls that are being thrown up in the air at the same time. We have then factions with whichever party, this person, these individuals saying one thing or another. What does it then do to the psyche of the people for whom this process is supposed to be for in the first place? One group is saying one thing, another group is saying another thing. Within that group, there are divisions. At the end of the day, if we are saying that you're subservient to the people of Kenya, are you not concerned then about how they are accepting or even perceiving all of this?
I don't think the people of Kenya expect a mass choir from our politics that we are in sync. People understand that we as political animals have different perspectives on issues. Yeah, and we are competitive, and somebody would like to find an edge on the other. I'll give you an example of I'll give you an example of what happened after the killing of Suleiman in the US. Even the Democrats were struggling to find an in, because everybody agrees that this was a terrible character, at least from the perspective of the US. But then they want a differentiation. Yeah. So let us have all these conversations. Politics, as I said, will remain persuasion. The person who has the best persuasive abilities, and Kenyans can discern what works for them and what doesn't work for them. At the end of the day, if you remember the meeting in Bomas, the greatest cheers from the public were when the chapter on who we are as a people was being discussed, when we could see the reflection of ourselves, that we are predisposed to offer bribes and
that
receive
tells
bribes.
you that's what
I'm saying.
That's what we want.
Exactly.
When you go out there and start telling us about to be prime minister,
so this is the
and regional
problem. You see,
governments,
you are falling
you
into
guys
that.
lose it.
You are falling into the trap, Eric, that I said you people like to throw yourselves into, because when we discuss these issues, you don't want to pay any attention. You want to push me back into discussing regional premiers and prime ministers. But I am telling you, and I said here, as ODM, our focus, and we believe that if one chapter only is implemented in this BBI report, is a chapter on shared prosperity, is a chapter on nationhood and who we are as a people. If that alone is addressed,
so as
I
the
believe
drivers,
we'll have made
as the drivers, and you call
step.
yourself the fathers of this process.
Yes.
Why don't you ensure that most of the political leaders who come out to speak, for example, at the rallies, are championing that side
That's
of
what
the
happened.
conversation?
That's what happened in Mombasa. I told you, the people of the coast actually gave good solutions to the perennial land problems. They gave solutions. They gave suggestions on
The
how they
speakers
want.
at the rally.
Absolutely.
Or are you talking
They
about
spoke about
the meeting
They
prior?
spoke about those issues. The people who decide what to give prominence are you people in the media, because in Governor Kingi's entire address, you have chosen to give prominence to his suggestion on regional premiers. Why not talk about the solutions to the land problem? And I was surprised. In fact, in addition to the issue of honesty, the people who are the causes of the problem of land in Mombasa, the coast, were there. One of them is here in the newspaper today. He has diverted a river, an entire river, from all the people to his farm. He was there.
13 minutes to 8 o'clock. This is a Situation Room. Kenya's biggest conversation. On the hot seat this morning is Edwin Sifuna, the Secretary General of ODM Party. We're discussing BBI, and he's saying that they are the fathers of BBI, and therefore what they are doing around the country is protecting this process. You believe him or not? Well, we wait to hear what you say. Good morning.
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
It's 12 to 8. Good morning, and how are you doing? This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. The conversation as well is happening on our digital platforms, Spice FM KE, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube, as well as www.spicefm.co.ke. Now, let's talk about the end process. how we see this BBI coming to life. So we've seen that the party leader of ODM has said he'd like to see a referendum. We've seen some leading lights in ODM, including Senator James Orengo, saying, let's have a referendum actually by mid this year. First of all, is a referendum feasible by mid this year?
I don't think that if Kenyans set their mind on anything, they will not be able to achieve it. There is a very solid reasoning behind the proposals that we get done with these resolutions or the referendum in the first half of this year. Eric, you know that once we get into the 2022 election cycle, it will be very, very difficult.
Once we get into
us. Yeah, in 2021.
Aren't we there already?
No. Okay, for us, we haven't gotten there. There are some who started campaigning after the results were announced in October of 2017. But for us, we haven't started. And in fact, part of the noise you hear, Latif, is that somebody has had the dance floor exclusively to himself. He doesn't like that other people are joining to appear to do a jig also. So when he sees that there's rally somewhere and there's 30 governors, that is his preserve. That's what he has been doing. So he doesn't like it, and that's why you hear all this hullabaloo. But back to the referendum question. If once we get into the 2022 election cycle, preparations need to begin ahead of time. If you talk to the IEBC, they will tell you that once you cross over into 2021, you're essentially into the election cycle for 2022.
Yep.
Preparations need to be made. There are proposals, for instance, that are going to touch on even how the election itself is conducted. We as political party leaders have been challenged, for instance, that next time the issue of meeting the gender threshold in the House is now the responsibility of political parties. Both the BBI report and a High Court judgment have said as much.
Yep.
As political parties, we need to prepare. If there are going to be any changes in the realm of the political parties' law or election laws, it needs to happen in good time. This is why the proposal is being made, that if it were possible, if it were preferable to Kenyans, we have this referendum.
So the question was, is it feasible? So first of all, if we are to have a referendum, would you want it to be conducted by the current IEBC or do you want to be conducted by a new IEBC?
First of all, it is not something that if we wanted a referendum right now, it is not something that we have a choice. The law directs that the people who are in office the ones to conduct the referendum and the elections. It's the same way we had to suffer them in Kibra, although you saw the struggles that we had with them. Something as simple as the law prescribing that when you go into a by-election, you provide a register of all the voters to all the parties involved.
Yeah.
It takes ODM to go to court to get an order on the very last night, just the night before the election, for these guys to give us a register of voters.
Yeah.
So you understand that our problems with the IEBC are not things that we imagine. Kenyans can see that these are people who, even when the law prescribes something, they don't want to follow it.
So they're not personality problems, they're institutional problems.
No. These are personality
problems. So in this case, it's personality issues.
Absolutely, because you see, Latif, it's not institutions who choose to disobey court orders. It is individuals. It's individuals in the institution. When the Supreme Court said, open the server, it is James Muhati, the director of ICT, and his bosses who refused to do it. It is not the institution of the IBC, it's not the building that is also in. So the problem is the people.
You have a problem with the individuals themselves.
Yes, if the law says provide a register, the IBC is not the building. It is the people. Somebody has to actually prepare and give you the register.
So the people that we have in IBC now, actually,
absolutely.
Now that we've gone into IBC,
and this is why the people of Kenya in the BBI report have said the current IBC needs to be disbanded.
And we have a fresh
one. It is there, and we want a fresh one, and we go back to the IPPG model. Now, back to the IPPG
where political
model,
parties are choosing the referee.
Going back to the IPPG model requires a change in the constitution, because the constitution already prescribes how you arrive at commissioners in the commission. So you have to change that and say it is going to go back to political parties. That referendum will also be about IBC. In fact, they will be presiding over their own death, because from that one they will not survive.
With what we see now, do we see a referendum happening in the middle of this year?
I don't think there is any challenge that is insurmountable other than addressing maybe the issue of financing of a referendum. That is probably the only hurdle that I see.
A big one,
but it is a big hurdle.
A big one, because right now, from where we see, and it's been said many times, there's no money, right? So in order to get this done, obviously something that is fund intensive, whichever way we choose to look at it. So again, I come back to that question: are we going to be able to get it done? Because they're very pertinent issues that need to be looked at, considered in order for a referendum to take place.
And is it a must that we go through?
And is it necessary?
I think. Let us first of all distinguish between whether something is necessary and whether it is something that is unavoidable. The Constitution itself, as it is right now, says if you touch on certain sections of the Constitution or articles of the Constitution, you mandatorily, you must have a constitutional referendum. So even the report in its current form, if it has proposed changes to the role of government, of parliament, which it has done,
a referendum.
Yes, it requires a referendum. It has proposed that we do away with Nairobi as a county in the manner in which it is currently constituted. And the Constitution says if you touch the structure of the devolved units, you require a referendum. So even in its current form, a referendum is mandatory. But what we're saying is we have to have a discussion about those challenges. One of the things that I know, the propaganda that is directed at this thing is that it requires a lot of money. Nobody, people pick figures from there and they say 30 billion, 200 billion. One of the conversations actually we need to have as a country is that we have the most expensive elections. If you go per capita, per vote, we have the most expensive elections. And what are the reasons why it is the most expensive elections? It is vendor interests. It is corruption. It is people trying to be clever with money here and there. And you have seen, even the BBI has tried to address this problem by saying now we are going to have an executive chairman.
Which takes me to the question I want to ask you.
Yes.
Specifically to ODM. The underlying and the common theme in our entire discussion is something called impunity.
Yes.
We've actually stated in this show that there's a silent ministry of impunity in the country that pervades almost every aspect of our lives. How does ODM plan to address impunity should they come into power?
Wow, you want me to lay out our 2022 manifesto now, but
impunity.
The truth of the matter is this. Let me just tell this. I tell people some of these things and they laugh. An ODM government is the least likely to disobey a court order just because of who we are. What we are about. If you have leading legal scholars and practitioners like James Orengo and myself as his understudy in government, we are least likely to disobey a court order. In fact, this impunity stems from that fact that there are people who are shielded. No, they are shielded from political, from legal consequence by virtue of their office. So, for instance, in this thing of Miguna, how is it very difficult to identify the person who issued the red alert in a government? How is it possible? That red alert, who signed it? Who issues it ordinarily? Yeah, let that person come before the judge and explain why they cannot follow a court edict. It doesn't make sense even to us. If an order has been issued by a court, every one of us is enjoined to respect the order. You don't start arguing with the order. So ODM, I can tell you, we have been in this position before. In fact, these days we are happy that experience is reaching our counterparts in Jubilee, that the things we used to tell them, that Article 37 protects you when you are peaceably assembled to be able to march. Now they are coming to see the light. I was very happy. I'm hearing some of them are experiencing the Damascus moment, and people are saying, "Oh, ODM is laughing at them." We are not laughing at them. We are actually extremely happy that they have come around to now see that we need a country that obeys the law, that protects all of us, even the weakest, not that only works for you when you are in power. So now we can have a conversation. We can have a conversation with Ndindi Nyoro about Article 37 and Moses Kuria when he was saying fire bullets into these people. Now we have seen that
we are coming to the end of the show. So.
But Mr. Sifuna, you are aware that you haven't answered my question, of course.
I have answered your question, and I'm telling you the truth. Impunity, first of all, stems from a lack of accountability before the law. It is that simple. Even some of the attacks that we are seeing against the judiciary, I've seen somebody putting up a banner on Mombasa Road today in the dead of the night. The judiciary, a judge will never improve the quality of your case. You put trash in, you get trash out. It doesn't matter how much you howl and shout at the judge. They are not going to convict somebody if the police have done a poor job. If the prosecution has done a poor job in presenting the evidence before the judge. Going after the budget of the judiciary, I was surprised yesterday. Moses Kuria, who is somebody who's in the budgeting committee, now they are coming up with minimums, percentages for financing the judiciary, for instance. The constitution as it is right now has not prescribed any minimum or maximum to the judiciary or to any of the arms of government. It is the budget committee in which he sits and parliament in general that decided that one time, because
Edwin,
they had beef with
30 seconds to the top of the hour.
Yeah.
So let me just cut you short. Get to the top of the hour. I'll give you 5 minutes at up to 8 or 5, so I can finish this particular point.
Yeah.
Edwin Sifuna is in the studio. He's the Secretary General of ODM, and you've been posting your comments and questions, of course, on Facebook. He's looking at them. He'll be responding to that as well. It's coming up to 8 o'clock. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning.
Spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM.
Right, it's
Kisumu.
north, south, east and west traffic through the city from Ngong Road, of course feeding in from Naivasha Road and then Langata Road as well this morning. Traffic everywhere you look. Thika Road as well, trying to get into the city centre, not a walk in the park unfortunately. Coming off Mombasa Road, of course we still have the same situation whereby it's bumper to bumper. Exercising patience is the order of the day today, no matter where you look. We do have an option to use the southern bypass off of Mombasa Road, but then you get to Langata Road where you're not going to be able to get into town anytime too quickly. Of course, using Bagathi Way to try and do that will slow you down a little bit. So we're going to have to get out of traffic hours for us to be able to see, lesser traffic where you go. But for now, we're going to ask that you exercise patience wherever it is that you might find yourself. If you find an alternate route or something that we should let people know to exercise caution about, Spice FM KE is where you can find us on Twitter, or 0719 012 600.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Edwin Sifuna is still in the studio on the hot seat. So Edwin, we're giving you an opportunity for 5 minutes to offer your quick rebuttal to what was came out of Naivasha yesterday. So they have 35% proposed, some cumulative 35% fixed tax to go and fund some of these things. One of them being the judiciary at 3.5%, some women fund and youth for another 5%, another 5% for special interest groups, women and youth as well, and persons with disabilities. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to that discussion we're having about dishonesty. As I was making the point, people like Kuria, in fact, the entire Jubilee bandwagon, they are in leadership position in the Houses of Parliament. They sit on powerful committees. They chair all those powerful committees. If it is something they wanted to do, they would have done. In fact, there is nothing in their actions in the past that suggests that they are genuine in these proposals they are making. Anytime they had beef with the judiciary, they cut 1 billion from their budget. Anytime they had a beef with any other institution, I remember there's a time when they were unhappy with the way Monica Juma receives them in her office. They denied, they refused to really approve her as a cabinet secretary. In the first term of Jubilee, you know, this is these are people who have been in power now 7 years. In the first term, they had what they used to call a tyranny of numbers, but they never used that tyranny for good. It would only emerge.
Did that tyranny actually even exist?
No, it existed. It existed because they had the majority in the houses of parliament and in all the committees. If Jubilee wanted in the first term to increase the revenue share of judiciary to 50%, they would have done it.
So I hear you
there
saying,
is nothing genuine in this, because these are people who are struggling to try and find an alternative conversation, an alternative agenda to the BBI
So
conversation.
Edwin, I hear you saying
Yeah,
in this
complete.
sense. So can I ask a question on then based on this? So then Kenyans shouldn't. Are you saying Kenyans should not believe some of what has come out from yesterday based on historical advantage?
No,
Where they had an advantage previously and they didn't do anything about it.
Or even to say,
And
so
now
when
that
we
they're
see
saying
them,
to
when we
the-
see
what
them going
yesterday,
around
what
the
they
country
said-
with their
what they
proposals on
said they
BBI,
would
we should
do,
tell them we cannot listen to you.
that
No,
we
I'm
wouldn't
just
believe-
saying a hyena does not change its ways. It doesn't change its ways. You have had the power to do these things. What is it that stops you? It is the same dishonesty that
So
I
you're
was
saying
talking
the
to. I'm
BBI
saying,
is not going to make a
how can you
change?
come? How can you come to shed crocodile tears in the coast about the railway that you built yourself and bludgeoned everyone into submitting that it was the best idea since sliced bread? You see, Kenyans know the people who have a history of walking the talk, and I am telling you, these are not the people to believe what they say.
Edwin Sifuna, thank you very much for coming this morning. We'd like to extend another interview, of course, another invitation when the BBI gathers some more steam, right?
Absolutely.
When all this conversation happens.
Absolutely.
Then towards the end of it, you'll come and tell us, this is what we wanted as ODM. This is
I think
what
the next time
we have presented.
Next time I come, I will be coming to ask you to vote yes in a referendum, so that we are able to address some of the issues that have been identified.
Asante sana. Do have a good day. This
Thank
is
you.
the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. We've been having Edwin Sifuna, ODM Secretary General. Good morning.
.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
So the conversation continues, of course, on our social media platforms, Spice FM KE, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and we are also on YouTube, Spice FM KE, and www.spicefm.co.ke. The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. We're here, Eric Latif, Nduoko, and CT Muga. Now, let's talk about foreign development assistance, CT.
Well, the history of this continent, I think, can be written or can be described with one sentence: economic assistance gone wrong. And this is because of all the assistance and all the billions of dollars or pounds or euros in the recent past that have been spent on this continent. Unfortunately, there isn't very much to show in many of the economies of this country. If I'm looking at sub-Saharan Africa, as a result of this, anything that can be referred to as foreign aid has always been looked at with great suspicion and has been considered as a new form of neocolonialism. But is this really the whole story? No. I am looking at something that took place in the year 2000, May 2000, when in the US, their parliament, Congress, brought into being something called the African Growth and Opportunities Act, AGOA as we called it. Now, it is often considered as, while it was considered and still is, a milestone in trying to ensure that development aid not only reaches the people, but that it actually helps to spur economic growth. And believing that with economic growth would also come political stability. And this particular act brought into being an aid package that was brought into being and whose time was supposed to end in 2008. It has been extended twice, to 2015 and now for a 10-year period up to 2025. Now, even as you look at all this, the one thing that stands out, especially from a comparative perspective when you look at what happens in the Far East, is that economies like Cambodia, China is in a different league of itself, Vietnam, you're talking about Korea, they have had similar impetuses introduced into the economy, and yet they have grown exponentially. And one thing again stands out. They have grown simply because the output of this particular infusion has resulted in industrialization, whereas sub-Saharan Africa has still remained in the throes of basic agricultural commodities with very little value addition. So in terms of even trading, you'll find that the deficit that works against these economies doesn't lessen, but it continues to grow despite the increase in trade. What I'm saying is this. Despite the negative publicity and the negative reality of some of these situations, they are not entirely colonial instruments. And this I say because if utilized properly, if understood and taken not just to heart, but implemented as they ought to, and if supported by the government as they should, the very activity that it proposes to do, it would have done. We now have a new organization called the Millennium Challenge Corporation who want to bring in something similar, but they want to throw in the element of governance. Once again, how well this thing works is not dependent purely on what they set out to achieve, but how it is we twist and turn and utilize these very objectives to our own end.
So we are the ones to blame.
This isn't one of those situations where we start with blame.
Isn't it?
This is one of those situations where we start and say, we continue yesterday's conversation, where did the rain start beating us? Because at the point when the proposal is made and the funds are available and the assistance is available, the rain isn't beating us, it's all sunshine. But then the doom and gloom scenario comes in when years go by and you have difficulties identifying the benefits that were outlined as being the outcome of this particular infusion of development aid. That's where the rain now starts becoming a factor of discussion. So it isn't blame.
Is it possible that maybe when this aid is coming, when these agreements are being signed, there's a lot of fine print that introduces very many blockages to fast implementation of this?
The fundamental,
so, for example,
yes.
for something to move from this point to the other, just because maybe the donor organization is thinking, we know the history of the officers in this country. There is a lot of pilferage and corruption. So in order to safeguard against theft and loss of money or misappropriation of these funds, we're going to put so many, stumbling blocks, so many nuts and bolts. So those nuts and bolts take forever to move.
What was unique?
And therein comes in now then.
What was unique about something like AGOA is that they took that into consideration and they lessened a great deal of these things. Now, one of the things that they understood was that many sub-Saharan countries had a problem with employment of youth.
Yeah.
And what we knew was export processing zones that dealt specifically, for instance, in textile manufacturing came into being. And these of necessity would employ this cadre of individuals. And they did. But what they did again to try and encourage trade is we didn't have enough, our manufacturing sector in the textile industry wasn't robust enough to supply what was actually required for these factories.
Yeah.
So they made a small provision to allow for these countries to actually import fabrics from other countries. Now this is the point where we lose out. Because if our capacity for industry had been great enough, it would have meant that increase in manufacturing, which would have meant an increase in income, would have meant an increase in employment, and that chain would have gone on.
Right,
So
and then you would have eliminated the need then to ask for any kind of contribution, for whether you're buying or not, from another country.
Yes.
And then inadvertently, what you do is then you open up the economy by now buffering certain industry from manufacturing across the board. But you see now in this case, I think because clearly what the agreement was at the end of the day was to say, okay, fine, it was growth and opportunity to say, all right, fine, export to us, but meet a certain standard. At the end of the day, very simply put, that is what it was.
The standards were set,
Yeah,
and they were understood.
Meet this
And it's clear
standard.
to meet them.
If you can
Yes.
meet this standard, essentially, we will buy from you. That's what it was.
Yep.
Right? So we created an environment, or the agreement then was, you then, as government, create an environment within which people then who don't have jobs, the youth, unemployed, etc., then will be able to work within the manufacturing space, and we will buy that product. Or
What
at least
should
we'll open up the trade agreement so that we then would be able to import from you. But meet the bare minimum. This is a standard that we're asking you to
So
keep. And I
the-
think it is at that point that we lost out.
The
No, we
minimums,
didn't.
the minimums are being met.
Actually, we didn't lose out at that
The,
point.
the youth are actually also being employed in
Yes.
that particular factory.
Yes,
and I
they
think
are.
the expansion of the industry is where the issue comes in, because you're talking about importing all the raw material that you need
That's where the problem arises.
to make these garments that you export.
You see, we've talked
so
about
we don't grow our
manufacturing.
textile industry
Yes, we
backwards.
don't. Thank you, Eric. If indeed, like this is the third time we're discussing this particular point in this show. Think of a situation where we were, so for instance, encouraging the cotton sector or whatever sector it is that produces the raw materials for the fabrics.
Yes.
There'd be growth in that sector.
Yeah.
The secondary level
there'd
of
be a
it,
ready market for-
exactly exactly, meaning as you grew it, you knew exactly where it was going, so that entire chain would have been completed. But ours is disjointed. That is where the problem arises.
And the problem is, every time there's a threat of removal of the AGOA benefit,
There's a clamour for it to be
we just see
yeah.
an immediate collapse of an industry, because it's not an industry. It's basically just one end of the industry. We're just going to have to see a collapse of the EPZ. And the EPZ, the major investors in this EPZ, many of them are Kenyans, and also there are some who are not Kenyans.
There are quite
There are quite
a
a
number,
number
who
that are
are
not Kenyans.
So the
Yes.
investors based in this particular zone, the EPZ, the only thing, the benefit that we are getting out of this is employment. And what is contained in the financial standard today is also showing us that the EPZs that we have, in terms of revenue to the country, has also been dwindling. The amount of money that they have contributed to the GDP, the EPZs, that's what it said in the financial standard this morning,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So the figures the percentages have been going down year on year since over the last 10 years or so. So what they're contributing today to the GDP versus what they were contributing last is dwindling. Which means
Unfortunately,
that
yeah.
then justify having that EPZ.
Right, and it's actually quite an unfortunate situation, because an EPZ on its own, I mean, country to country, it should actually be quite a significant contributor to the GDP in terms of what you as a country are able to create, basically.
Yep.
What you would essentially be known for, and then of course now that is swapped for some kind for definite monetary value. So to see that an EPZ where you have zones around the country and they're not able to meet a certain threshold, and then of course to be seen on the outside world, and we can't do that, then there's definitely a problem. And to see that this act opened up for such, in addition to whatever else may have been going on as a directive or as government policy, then to say that threshold cannot be met. And to make it worse, year on year, it has been going, has been dropping in terms of its numbers and in terms of its output. It's actually something that needs to be given some consideration and really being looked at to say that, okay, we're able to kill so many birds with this one stone, whereby you grow your country's industries.
Yeah.
At the same time, you then increase what you're able to export to other countries. And if we can't do that, then here we see a lot of times when we're looking to get extra funds, they could come from here, definitely.
Yes and no. If indeed we were talking about the big four in this country and the manufacturing sector focused on ensuring that entire chain that we speak about was actually fulfilled. Forget the lip service that is paid to this issue and talked about to the point where you can actually become deaf. Not that. An actual program that tells you this is the plan we have for producing cotton. These are the incentives we're giving the farmers. This is the plan we have for resuscitating the ginaries. This is the plan we have for this. And it's the length of time associated with this particular program is this. Now, that is a forward movement. And the industries that we're focusing on are these. Then you understand exactly where it's going to go. Let me give you an example of, say, something like the sugar industry. When you grew sugarcane, you knew exactly what it is that you're doing and you knew exactly where to take it. You know what it's for. Clear. Grow the sugarcane. It was supported. it is harvested, you are given the necessary inputs for it, etc., etc., etc. So even when now the support dwindled and imports overtook what was being produced and the industry was actually being strangled, as we saw, we knew exactly what was happening because that particular chain had existed. Now, but significantly, it was never complete. Because what is complete with that particular chain is not white sugar as we see it. No. It is the alcohol content that comes from it. Because that is used as a substitute or an additive to fuel in some countries. It is actually used and made into drinkable human consumption alcohol. It's actually made into pharmaceutical. It is a much more valuable product. We never fully got there. And many countries that actually grow sugar, that's where they are at. And this white product that we keep talking about as sugar, it is probably the least expensive product from that particular cane. Least. But we were still at the stage where the white sugar is what is considered to be the most valuable. And factories that have understood this, or economies that understood this, that entire sugar product from the husk, everything was utilized. Husk became fuel, meaning nothing went to waste. But in this particular economy, that was a full cycle that was actually never fully achieved. Not really. Now, why am I saying that these particular assistance packages are not in and of themselves necessarily colonial tools? It's this. No one will give you assistance without considering how they also stand to benefit.
Of course.
That's number one. Now, it is up to you then to consider how you will benefit. Whereas if you listen to the hue and cry that we often read about, it's that they didn't do this. They should have done this. Instead of saying, this is the package I have, how best do I ensure that it benefits me? And how do I push for that agenda? No. That is part of our conversation, but at a minimum. If indeed the focus on all the amount of money that has been poured in, again, I use a comparative element. The truth of the matter is that these trade balances that we talk about with, say, the US and other countries would have been different. Now, to understand this, I'm talking about the year of 2017. Exports into sub-Saharan Africa from the US was $14 billion US. Okay? Sounds like a lot of money, doesn't it?
It's not, actually.
Okay, the trade with China totaled 636 billion.
US and China.
Yep. 613 now.
Versus our 14.
Yep. Just so that you understand. So when someone tells you...
And please understand, we're looking at sub-Saharan Africa, not Kenya.
Not Kenya.
Not just one country, right?
It's regional, okay? Now, why did I bring out China? Because if you look at other countries, like, say, next door, the next is Canada, who are next door. The next, and Canada is at 582 billion. Comes Mexico, 557. These are May 28 figures, all right? At the bottom of that, you'll find the UK at, say, 107 billion. Now, all I'm saying is this. We are really far off.
We're doing badly.
We are completely far off. And yet, if you look at the natural resources which we primarily deal with, have significant value when they are processed to the stage where we keep talking that they should be processed.
But let me ask
to.
this question, CT. Are we exhausting how much we're allowed to export under AGOA? I'm sure AGOA is not an open check.
It isn't, but I don't think we are.
So we have tea, because I've just been looking at it.
Tea, flowers,
cut flowers, coffee,
etc. Yes, exactly.
Textile, right?
Yes.
And some nuts here and there.
Some nuts here and there. And we're talking about the ones that grow on trees, of course. Yes.
Right. Not the walking variety. All right.
So do you think we're meeting that
in tea and coffee? Let me talk about tea, because I believe in tea we do. Because we are a serious player when it comes to tea.
Yes,
on this
and we are
particular
exporting all over the world.
Yes, exactly. Coffee, we have challenges. And we have serious competition. The time when we do well is when you hear something like frost has affected some product in Brazil or some other place. But other than that, we have challenges. And the reason is same. We do not take the product to the the stage where its value could bring us more money.
Yeah.
Same story
Value addition.
all over again.
I think it's interesting to see that there are certain sectors where definitely we're doing very well, even with flowers. For the longest time, you would easily say that in the region, Kenya held the monopoly in terms of export of flowers to especially European countries. Then, after some time, we started to see the rise out of other countries like Ethiopia. And in some cases, interestingly enough, Mauritius. And then now them being able to export such. But in other sectors, I don't think we've even begun to scratch the surface in terms of the potential, in terms of what then we're able to do. And now the thing is, yes, AGOA was not an open check, but what it did is that it created opportunities. That didn't mean that they were going to come and prescribe every single sector or every single thing then that you were meant to do or that you could explore that could come out for export. It just meant that our creativity needed to be applied, our innovation needed to be applied, and our focus, exactly, also needed to be applied in the sense that just look at what we're talking about sugar now, or sugar cane. It's not only one thing that you can do with this particular product. There's not only one avenue of export they could use for a particular product, and it doesn't necessarily have to be, to one particular market. One product could give you 2 or 3 other products that could go to different markets. In just terms of variety of exchange, there's so many different things that can be done. So I don't think in this sense that we've applied as much as we can. And I'm not just talking about Kenya, I'm talking across sub-Sahara, across the continent, in terms of the potential that we have, especially because the raw material is here.
What is it that is hindering us to get there? Because I'm trying to think back, and I'm thinking, well, we keep thinking of impunity. We say, lack of leadership. We talk about corruption. I don't think those are the main issues. There must be something else that is like, for example, making us not...
Eric, impunity, who is the father and mother of corruption, plays a fundamental role in all this. But that having been said, the truth of the matter is this. There are certain aspects of our so-called industries that have been dominated by certain groups of individuals, certain communities to be specific. Now, they, I would argue, would look after number one, and number one is the profit margin. These discussions that we have here yes, it considers profit, it considers business, yes, but it also considers there's a social element to these programs. Because when you're thinking employment, you're thinking governance, it's not just profit. It's how this country can also run well.
Yep.
Now, until and unless this particular product and everything that is involved with it is given that wholesome impetus, because those who have the factories don't grow these things.
No.
It's not their job to.
Yes, exactly. But the impetus for people who grow, meaning, remember, there is the initial stage where you plant and grow this. Then there's the intermediate, for instance, with the cotton, where you have generaries.
Yeah.
If these were grown, and these can be done at a very local level, all right, then the empowerment that we speak of would actually take place. So the disparity we are speaking of, because if you have raw materials being imported, how is it benefiting you?
So where is the problem? Because
here now,
so we've said
we
focusing simply on the textile industry, right? So textile industry based within the EPZ, investors come and they put up the plants within the EPZ,
They do.
right?
Yes.
And then they are looking at how am I going to get my raw material? So whose job is it to ensure that we are getting local raw material?
Government.
This is government.
It's government.
And government, we have officers in government who sit and they know exactly what is needed. In fact, they are the ones who were very much at the forefront of signing the deals, the AGOA deals and the rest.
They were.
So,
Eric, remember this conversation we've had?
Because sometimes I see like politics also plays a role here.
Oh, it does play a
huge role.
It does.
So you may find somebody in the trade ministry who has sat down, who has ever come up with a plan on this is how we are going to ensure that this AGOA rolls all the way backwards to a farmer.
Remember,
we have cotton farmers who are going to benefit this way and the other. And then the politics comes in and introduces the stumbling blocks. But I can't just pinpoint. That's why I'm asking.
Think, for instance.
Where is it?
You've heard us discuss how we seem to have rolled back time. There was a time in this country where cotton growing was a very viable business, just like as pyrethrum was,
Yes,
as sisal was. And these were raw materials that were in use, and people made a living out of it. Kikomi, Kisumu, cotton. What do you think it was? It was where, when you left the ginnery, you took your product to that particular factory and they produced fabrics. The textile factory, what was it called?
Rivertex.
Okay? They could have grown more.
Transcom. Was it
Yes.
not? Was it?
No, it was called...
The thicker one.
yes. We got... we'll remember it. But we got to a point in this country where they were not just producing factories, but were manufacturing clothes.
Right, that's true.
We were there. And this was before Goa, before any of these things. We were already there. That cycle I'm speaking of existed. You knew exactly where your raw materials came from and
Yeah.
the local. You knew where the tertiary level was, and you knew all this was done. It got dismantled. It was never revived. I'm answering your question. It just simply never, it was never revived.
I don't think it's been made a priority, unfortunately. And even when somebody would tell you, or even if you were to sit and say, all right, we have prioritized, I think you would find very clearly that it has not been at the top of the list when it comes to that. Whereby there are countries in this world that thrive.
Top of whose list?
That
The political leadership, or is it the...
Just throw them all into the same basket.
It doesn't really because
Anyone
if
who is in a position of decision making or authority and who might have a say in this matter, didn't push.
I want to give the benefit of the doubt to people who are in that particular line. I think people who are in the textile industry, whose profession is that they've risen through the ranks, they are senior officers in textile in the ministry.
No, they don't make those decisions.
They don't make the decision in terms of
So
who
the
you're
person
going
at the
to
top-
do an export agreement with. They
And
don't.
that's where the politics comes
This
in.
is what we're saying. Because at the end of the day, any country, really, if you want to think of it worth its salt, will not ignore the huge range of possibilities that are existent when it comes to export.
It's not even that alone. Consider that countries have a duty to protect their people by protecting their products. Protectionism is allowed. It's a tool that a government can use to ensure that they protect a certain sector of the economy.
Yep.
Do you ever hear of that happening in this country?
Well, yes, now with milk.
How exactly is it?
The new one with milk.
Explain to me how it works.
It's rolling out now. We've been imposing a 16% VAT on any milk that's coming out of the East African market region.
What about coming from outside the region, like say New Zealand and Australia?
Those are the ones. Anything outside the East African market, 16% VAT and such other.
And how long has it taken for us to get there?
I don't know.
It took a minute.
8:30. Good morning. Let's take a look at the traffic.
Spice FM, Nyeri. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Traffic. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM.
All right, Langata Road is doing today what Thika Road did yesterday, swapping spaces. And here we see traffic. It's a nightmare all the way from Brookhouse Schools down to Timor. It is not moving, absolutely bumper to bumper. That's where our focus is this morning and asking the question. There was an accident there earlier, and this is the remnants of what we see. So everybody got out on the road at the same time, and we're not seeing any kind of movement whatsoever. Sorry, folks, but you're just going to have to sit this one out. Mombasa Road behaving a little bit better now, getting past the hour where it was still terrible, but moving slowly, but moving all the same. Thika Road looking a lot better. Of course, we know that right around the Pangani underpass, it's clogged up just a little bit, but you get to the Globe Cinema roundabouts with no trouble whatsoever. Looking a lot better now. All right, look, keep an eye on what's happening on Langata Road for now. If you have anything that you need to let us know about, Spice FMK is where you can find us on Twitter, and we'll keep people moving.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice Up and Right. 94.4 Spice FM,
Let's
Nairobi.
open up the phone line so the conversation continues on online as well. 0719-012-600 online, Spice FM KE Facebook, Spice FM KE Twitter, as well as YouTube, Spice FM KE. So 0719-012-600. Chime in this conversation. CT.
You know, if one speaks honestly about business, because this is really what we're discussing here, even when someone proposes something that is on paper or supposedly of benefit to you, the complete truth is that what is of benefit to them must also be immense. Otherwise, they wouldn't they wouldn't push that particular agenda. Now, the problem I see here is a mindset that we believe that when people help us, they're helping us, if I may use a Kenyan term, for free. Mm-hmm. There is nothing of that sort. There are no free lunches or breakfasts or suppers. There is a very clear correlation between what that person hopes to gain and what they believe would be a good message to deliver to you to ensure that you participate in this thing. And the benefit must be real. And you must see it. But how far you push this benefit now is entirely up to you. Because if you see the platform and you understand it, I am saying we need to inject a sense of realism into the way we do business.
And I think also an element of seriousness. I mean, apart from that, to really be serious about some of these things. Because we see entire countries that are able to survive on their export.
Like which ones?
I mean, who are able to survive on
like Angola.
in the way in which they're able to survive, they do that by their export,
and then
right?
serving their people.
Angola's doing bad.
All right, let's call it a large chunk of what they're able to export, and being able to see an opportunity and then take it for everything it's worth. We talked about, for example, and it's not necessarily just manufacturing. We've given the example of Hungary, for example, that is world renowned for exporting education. So they've seen that this thing can work. We've been able to put individuals, human bodies, in different institutions around the world, and it has become something that we've been able to package as a country and then see it through to an end for everything that it can possibly offer. The same thing that we've been able to say here, we have a product, what can we possibly do with it?
How can we benefit from it?
And this is as a direct result of somebody somewhere being deliberate and focused about what it is that they're doing.
But actually,
CT pause. Let's go to the phone lines and
somebody
hear what.
wants to call in?
Yes, this is Lydia in Parklands. Good morning, Lydia.
Good morning, Spice FM. Thank you for your great work that you do over the week.
Thank you, Lydia.
Thank you. Now, I wanted to talk about businesses. Now, Kenya had businesses in South Africa because they had customers in South Africa. But the people are telling Kenyans and Angolans, what are you doing here? Go away. This is not your place. This is belonging to South Africa. Go away. I mean, an honest hard worker is an honest hard worker. To chase somebody away, that is homophobia.
Yep.
That is robbery. So if somebody's supplying us milk from Uganda or wherever, doesn't matter. They're honest hard workers. They're not robbers. They're helping the poor to eat something or drink something cheaply.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if we try to punish them, pay this tax and pay this and pay that, we are not the honest hard workers to do that. They are the honest hard workers. Let them do their work.
Let them do their job.
Let the poor afford them. I notice the rich people take the expensive ones.
Thank you. Thank you, Lydia.
Let the honest hard worker do his work all over the world.
Thank
no
you.
homophobia. Thank you.
So, CT, she's basically talking about that protectionism and saying, well, protectionism as well is unfair to hardworking people of the world.
There's a lady by the name of Penelope Goldberg. She works as the World Bank's chief economist. And one of the things that she mentioned during an interview in the report that was there after it in 2020 was that there is a way in which any sector of one's economy can actually attain this goal that we keep speaking of. It's called the certification standards, meaning you get to a point where your product meets the standards that are accepted internationally.
Yeah.
Then it is not difficult to access markets. This morning, remember, we were discussing about the potato factory in Nyandarua, isn't it? And we're saying potato factory, and said, It sounds like potato factory, but we've had potatoes. No. The potatoes we eat are the potatoes we like. If you were to ask someone to show you what they mean by a potato that meets this certification standard, it may look the same, but you'll find, for instance, it doesn't have those pimples that our potatoes have. Okay? It doesn't have those blemishes that our potatoes have.
It has gone to a group of schools.
It has gone to a finishing school, okay, where the blemishes have been finished, okay. But it is a product that anyone that has a franchise that works with potatoes or needs potatoes, we look at and say, this is the standard we want to maintain for our clients.
Yes.
Okay. Now, something as simple as that is something the government can push without too much sweat or too much blood. In fact, no blood at all, just a little sweat. Now, there are other things. Essentially, it's a mindset. But it's taken a governor of a particular county to understand this is possible, this is available, and there is a market, and we can grow it. We've been growing it anyway. Let's just get to this standard and do it. The flower industry led in this. Remember, for the longest time, one associated flowers in the European market, the tulips that came from Netherlands and what have you. Could one have foreseen that Kenya would actually be a force in the growing of flowers? No. But they met this certification standards. So we have been able to export. Why are we able to export our tea? Again, our tea production meets those standards. So we're not talking about something that hasn't been done. We're simply saying that it should be widespread. It's something that can be encouraged so that the so-called value addition is actually seen to help the farmer. And it is not that difficult. Not really.
No, it really isn't difficult, and I think that is because really, once you want to look at it this way, there's no science to it that then dictates the way in which it needs to be done. And really, there are certain things that can be put in place to have it done, but it's been done before. And this is where the worrying thing is, because of the fact that it has been done before. We've seen that those theories and those methodologies can be applied to get it done, but then again, I think there's a refusal then in terms of placing it as a priority on whatever list they may be. You have before you a certain docket. There's no reason why. Examples that have been given. There's no reason why it cannot be done as a country as a whole with a collective agreement and saying, here, this is actually a revenue source for us as a country. The agreements have been put in place. The motion has been set in place. Why can't we just take it from one place to the next? We have examples of Nigeria, for example, where you have oil. But guess what? In terms of other resources that the country has, a huge amount of resources that the country has, but nobody's taking nobody is taking the bull by the horns and saying, here's what we can actually do, here's what we can actually put together, package and export that would actually contribute hugely to our GDP. So a lot of times I look at the solutions right here with us. The solutions are right here with us. We just choose not to prioritize them as avenues.
Sometimes are we just too overly critical of ourselves? We look back and everything we're just saying, we don't do this, we fail to see this, we fail to see the other. Yet we all agree that when it comes to capacity, we have that capacity. In terms of even human capacity, we have that capacity. People who have expertise in all these fields that we talk about, they're there.
All the more reason why we would bring a huge disservice if we don't call it out. All the more reason why it would be huge if we don't call it out.
And the reason why other countries come here to benchmark with us is because we actually do exist and we have the ideas.
Can you imagine? You have the idea, you can do something with it, you sit on it, you don't do anything, people come, they learn from you, they go, they excel, and you're still sitting there.
Maybe it also comes back to us as the people. So the people who have the ideas come up with the ideas, they pass on to the leadership class, and then the leadership class is looking and thinking, if I take this to the people, they're not going to support it.
Part of the reason
So some
why
of the things that, you see, things that a benevolent dictator does, and our guest yesterday was talking about a benevolent dictator, and some of these things would actually help us to move. Things that a benevolent dictator does, he's not going to go through this whole democracy of, you guys, do you see this is a good idea? He just comes and says, you know what, this is a good idea. This is what we're going to do. So some of our political leaders have that. They've been fed the information by technocrats, and they've been told this is what is needed. But then they have to make a political decision. They're thinking, if I go back to the people, you and I, and tell them this is a good idea, we are going to start, hue and cry. There'll be opposition here and there. There'll be so much noise that we make. We'll be complaining and saying, no, these political leaders are not seeing the sense in this, and we fight it. Maybe we are the problem.
Actually, I don't want to look at this from the perspective of a problem, because everything that you're saying is actually true, in that we complain a great deal. But sometimes when people don't know what else to do, they will complain. Think, for instance, for a single second and consider this continent, when it comes to just political cohesion, us getting along, that isn't quite there. You find fights spilling over to other countries, so instability in one country affects the other. Automatically, this will affect business. It will affect trade automatically. Up until recently, before we got the Africa Free Continental Trade Area, and this, remember when we were talking about LAPSET and how it can feed into this? You know, we've had these talks for the longest time on this continent. But when you strengthen these things, it actually helps that cohesion we're talking about, but it also helps bring about the standards, or the high standards we speak of. The countries I was talking about, China is a massive country, one country. The US, it has states, one country. All these countries that I mentioned, with the exception of Great Britain, which is a small island, all these people have countries that have within them provinces that are almost the size of countries in other places.
Yes.
But they're cohesive. So again, therein lies their strength. They're able to do things like, for instance, you'll find one part of the US grows, they grow this here. Here, you'll find fruits. They know. The place where you find fruits, you will not find wheat. Okay?
Yep.
It's understood. So, it is the ABC of economics. So, it's called specialization. People specialize. It makes it easier for even trade to take place.
And for the government to support
It
them.
makes
We
it
have the
easier
same,
for
we
the
can
government
say.
to be able to, number through and say, okay, this is where we have this is where we have the other thing. And then it makes it very easy for them also for planning purposes. But then you also see that this was from inception and said, this is the way in which we are going to do this, and we will follow through in this manner.
And they did not argue.
And they didn't argue, and they were focused on that.
Today, if you went to Ukambani and told the people of Ukambani, you know what, the only thing we're going to grow in this area is mangoes. The kind of backlash that you're gonna get. Oh, so what are we going to be eating? So no. But we also like keeping our. Are they telling us we can't keep our cows? The kind of backlash that we get from the people. Go to Limuru here and say, here we're going to have fruit trees. This is the only thing that we want in this region. I can't do tea. I can't do my cows. This is the area where we are doing so well with milk. Our government has the ideas. The entire thing of government specializing and coming out with zoning areas and saying this is a very specific zone for tea. This is an area for cut flowers. This is an area for livestock production. If we come and try and implement that here in this country,
they tried.
It takes forever.
It was politicized, and politicized negatively. Let me give you an example of the place I come from, Muhoroni. We grow sugarcane predominantly. The largest portion of any land, but there's something called homestead.
Yes.
They gave you minimum, everybody got, unless you had what they call the larger pieces, 2.5 acres of homestead. You could grow, your subsistence farming could be done here. You could keep
kitchen
your cows.
gardens.
They are bigger than kitchen gardens, actually. 2.5 acres is a lot of
It's
land.
a huge piece of land.
Yes, exactly. So the very thing you're saying, you can do those pet things that you like. But the cash crop is the sugarcane, and it's given a larger area. And if you look at many places where the government set up settlement schemes, they had a similar plan. When I keep talking about us rolling back time, these are the things. We had done them. We had gotten there. It was a question of strengthening it so that it just gets better and better.
And diversification also, in introducing the aspect of diversification, taking what you already have, because as they say, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So here you had something that was working. All we needed to do was take it, step it up to the next level, diversify, while still maintaining an element of focus and being extremely deliberate in making sure that this thing could happen. So it can happen. It's not about being overly critical or saying that, well, must we always find fault? But it's saying that there was something that was working so well, and in the day and times in which we find ourselves today, could have actually provided an alternative arm of income for the country. So to see something like that, and then to be able to look at the expertise and then the natural resource that exists in this country, and we're not able to do this country, other countries just in Africa, and then we're not able to do anything significant with it, it's actually quite a painful thing to see.
Phone lines are still open, 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. Chime in this conversation, 12 minutes to 9.
breathing life into the 80s. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
You know that
I want to go to the phone line shortly and pick your what you have to say about this. We have Patrick who's calling in from Nairobi. Good morning, Patrick.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
Not bad at all.
What are your views on this?
I just want to contribute and say that the problem that we have is a problem of using our energies in the wrong direction.
Mm-hmm.
Every day you wake up in the morning, you have this energy that came from your galley and sukuma last night.
Yep.
And you can decide to use it in various ways. You can lay in bed the whole day, but then you lose a day. You're not productive.
Yeah.
Or you can go and do some work and make some money.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the problem with our energies that we use as a country, let's start from the political side, is that we use it in making noise all over the place that doesn't help us. You find, immediately after the 2018 elections, we started making noise about the 2022 elections.
Yes.
So we've been wasting time throughout, including today, running around the country, making a lot of noise. If that noise was directed towards productive activity, like what you see in the Central Kenya MPs, make noise about their milk and coffee and whatever, then something was done about it.
Yeah.
If we did make noise about the production that is required to be done, reinstating our industries, reinstating our farming communities, then we would get somewhere. We would not even be having this discussion.
So we are the ones who are just misdirecting our energy, basically. That's what
we're misdirecting our energy. As the electorate, we're also misdirecting our energy. We should be holding these people to account and telling them, we don't want this noise about 2022 because it's only one person who will be president, and whoever will be, will be. We cannot all be president for 50 million people.
Yeah.
So let us hold these people to account and tell them we want to have noise about production. We want to have noise about restating our Kikomis and Rivertex and thicker cotton mills and Mountex. Then we hold them to account of that. You guys in the media can help us by directing the narrative towards production, as opposed to directing the narrative towards BBI every day. This guy is hitting this guy. That's all we see in the newspaper. It's so tiring.
Thank you. Good point, Patrick. Good
directing towards holding these guys to account and telling them this is what we want. And they will do it. They have no choice.
Thank you. Good points. Thank you. Have a good day, Patrick.
Thanks, Patrick.
You too.
0719-012-600. CT.
If you are thinking seriously about this discussion and talking about how we complain, where I think Eric is coming from, and he is right on this one, complaints seem to take center stage. And it's like someone can't see light at the end of the tunnel. Now, this is like despair. So it's a litany. It's always, this isn't happening, this is happening. And it then becomes the norm. You heard me say that we are a nation of complainers. The knee-jerk reaction to a situation is
no.
Yes. Kabza? You haven't fully heard it? No. Say, okay, so what exactly are you saying no to? No. Okay.
Let me explain.
Yes. Now, why is that? It's a mindset. So even the problem with that, so even when something positive comes your way, the likelihood of seeing any positivity is negated, even before we begin. And I think sometimes when we point out to some of the things the government ought to do, I feel, and this is why you see, I keep tampering it with saying, but indeed the government has done this.
Yeah.
It has, but it hasn't. But these things we speak of have been done, not experimented on. They have been done. They have
to
worked.
An end. Yeah.
And we have seen the benefits of these things. Somewhere along the line, we lost our way, and we are now starting to reignite that whole thing again. And that's why it's difficult. Because it's coming at a time when the despondency, the despair, the negativity is at its peak.
Is at its peak.
So that's what's meeting it.
So what worked and then stopped working makes people feel,
Yes.
I don't trust any other solution.
Exactly, why?
Right, or that anything else that is presented is going to be bungled
We keep-
anyway.
we keep
so
going back.
you come
Oh,
and
we
give
used to
me a
have a-
new idea. I'm just going to assume that you're going to apply the same kind of,
Waste my
unseriousness,
time
waste
and
my
then
time, my
make it
resources.
collapse.
If I decide to invest the little that I have in this to join with what would be the government bandwagon, you're going to mess it up anyway. So a lot of people have that. So even if it would be seen as complaining at some point, it's then peppering everything with a bit of experience to say that this is what we were dealt before, or this is what we saw play out on the national stage before. So then, of course, I deal with a little bit of skepticism when it comes to then applying either my belief or my hand at this, because I'm not sure which direction it's going to go.
At the same time,
However, I do agree that certain things need to be listened to from end to understand. You gave an example, out of the hat, of saying, okay, come to Kambani and say, we will just grow mangoes here. There's a reason for that. There's a treatment behind all of it. Adequate, proper climate conditions. We can see that we can get the most output from this region if we see that we all come together and grow the same thing, better for the earth, etc., etc. That kind of a treatment just doesn't need to be applied to paper. It also needs to be applied to the minds of those who are going to be involved. And then, of course, changing the mindset where we understand and say, okay, this is for the greater good, the collective good of the country. Then that now would probably change the conversation over time, as opposed to throwing up our hands and saying, well, we tried and it didn't work.
If you look at the growth of Kenya's horticulture industry, especially the export horticulture industry, right? It just took a few people who saw this opportunity and they came together and they said, look, this is where the opportunity lies, and these are the regions that can grow what we need to export. If we need the French beans, this is where we can get the French beans. So when it's market driven that way, and then you have people who are spearheading it, it works. Look at the flower industry, that what you're talking about now, the horticulture industry. If you go to huge parts of Kirinyaga County, you'll find they're actually growing horticultural crops for export. Go to Naivasha and all the flower farms there. In fact, the entire region of Naivasha and the North Rift, you find flower farms dotting the area. So sometimes I think the power is with the people. And if we just come together and say, this is what we need. Githunguri farmers, when the Githunguri farmers came together and they said, so we are able to do this. Zero grazing with our small pieces of land. We're able to rear cattle here, and this is what we shall do. We shall increase the productivity of these cattle, and then we shall have this particular place where we come up with a milk processing plant. They did that. It is a success story. People come from Rwanda to come and study that.
You know the joke, of course. The time our MCAs from Kiambu wanted to go and benchmark in Rwanda.
On milk.
Yes.
Where they had originally just left from benchmarking. Right.
And then the Rwandese told them, but we came from Kiambu. The power of the people, the point I was making, is the power of the people. The cooperative movement, whatever movement you want to call it, Chama, whatever it is.
The solutions to these problems of ours exist. We actually have them. And experts may come and tell us what we already know, and we listen to them because we consider them as experts.
Yeah.
For instance, one of the things that we don't address when we talk about manufacturing is our labor costs. Okay, we had someone who works in that industry and says it's not that high. But internationally, it's high.
It is high.
Because I'll just give a case in point, Bangladesh. The reason why Bangladesh gets a very huge chunk of these businesses is because their labor is really genuinely cheap.
Because how they treat their workers.
Same thing in China.
Let's just call it that way.
Of course, the working conditions for a lot of these,
many of
what they
them
call
burning up in
sweatshops.
Why don't we throw in child labor while we're at it?
Right, exactly.
Yes.
So, you have 8-9-years working in conditions that, of course, less than acceptable. Deplorable
Yes.
situations.
It's going to be
but
cheap.
it's cheap, of course. So it's definitely going to be cheap.
You see the competitive edge. Here we are discussing how it is we haven't done things which we ought to have and we could have. And yet, the country hasn't ground to a halt. You had said something and I objected to it. What I was objecting to was this. This country has proved over and over again that the resources that are needed to run the country, we have within the country. All you needed was to see what the Kibaki government did when they were able to raise money, the same economists, there's another one, this one, and had enough money to run the businesses, meaning we're budgeting with what we had. You don't need to see it twice. Once is adequate for you to know it can be done. That's it. So the resources do exist.
Oh yeah, this is what I'm saying. What is painful is that the resources exist, the expertise exists, but we still somehow seem to sit here and not be able to do anything about it. That's my contention.
Actually, there's a lot we
if
can
the
do
resources
about
were
it.
not there, and you say, okay, well, we just have superb policymakers, or you say, actually, we have the resources, but we don't have the human resource
We
in
do
terms
have
of.
those.
I'm just giving an example. Then we would have a different situation. But here, both. You have both.
You have everything.
Everything that is
Everything you
needed
need.
to get it done. If you said I had one, I didn't have the other, then that would be something different. But here, everything that is needed is here. That's the problem.
We were bewitched by politicians. It's a political class. I keep taking it back there.
No.
For as long as a political class.
It's a shared responsibility, Eric. We will go around this one, but it is a shared responsibility. The politicians have their bit, and
we also have.
As do we. We also have our bit.
Coming up to 9 o'clock, the conversation continues. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads, and then we come back. 0719 012 600.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
All right, still left a little bit on Mombasa Road today. There's some traffic still being experienced there, but now we see the problem still being Langata Road and Kiambu Road today within the city, not moving as fast as we'd like it to, of course. Really bumper-to-bumper situations that we see there. We don't know a further problem apart from the accident that we saw happening on both these roads today, but right now we're just going to have to deal with what we see. Yes, apart from that, it's okay. All right, there was an accident just outside the Next Gen Mall on Mombasa Road. If you don't have to use that area, please try and avoid it because it's causing heavy traffic right now, even at around 9 o'clock. Kiambu Road, also, like we said, giving us some problems. Approach with caution. If you're not in a hurry, don't use those two roads this morning. Spice FM KE, reach us on Twitter or give us a call, 0719 012 600.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
We thank you very much for choosing The Situation Room this and every weekday morning, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. Please tell your friends wherever they are around the country. If they're in Mombasa, they can tune in to 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, Eldoret 96.7, Nakuru 96.0, Nyeri 90.9, and 97.7 in Malindi. Of course, you can also find us on our digital platforms, www.spicefm.co.ke, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. We live stream the show every morning. Spice FM KE. Just go and search for that, and you'll find us there. We're talking about exploiting our full potential, especially when you get some assistance from our foreign development partners. CT, you were saying that we all share blame.
Well, it's not blame. Remember today.
Responsibility, right?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
It's something that it's like you blame your MP for corruption, and yet you're the one who's always going out to him and asking him to dole out money to you. You share that responsibility. If we say that we complain about the policemen and how they take bribes, we often offer policemen bribes. So we take responsibility for that as well. I mean, I brought in the concept of facing the truth and perhaps more, let me say it, perhaps more succinctly, facing reality. The reality is, so long as we feel that there's always someone to blame for our problems, we'll never address them accurately. And even if there's a solution staring at us, we will never be able to take up that solution. That actually is just the truth of the matter as far as I see it.
Bottom line.
Bottom line, everything that we want to do can be done. But even though this is an old song, unfortunately it has to be sung again. If you think that someone else is going to come in and solve that problem for you and that your participation is going to be to receive, then you are indeed deceived.
Okay. We can say it with Ndu for you. Sorry.
It's not going to work.
It's not going to work.
Sorry.
So let's move the
Is it
conversation.
doom and gloom?
It's not.
It sounds like
It's not doom and gloom. It's just that CT is saying, well, the solution is right here.
Yep.
Right here in front of our eyes.
And there are lots of solutions.
Very many of them.
Yes.
So it's just for us to open our eyes and grab at the solution.
Yes.
Shift the gears a little bit. Talk about something happening in the... So where is Russia? Is that the far east, north?
This would be the east.
The farthest... farthest
More-
northeastern.
More east than anywhere else
All
from
right.
where you're sitting. Right. So most recently we heard from Vladimir Putin that basically what he's looking at is extending his term. Now, extending his term, not necessarily sitting in office, but extending his ability to influence power in the country, even as one who doesn't necessarily sit in the prime minister position. After 20 years, it's very clear, from where we see that he's trying to protect his legacy by negotiating a controlled power handover in Russia. So he's going to be retiring from day-to-day administration, but he's going to keep a firm hand on policy direction as Russia's father figure, essentially Russia's Baba Yao, much as what the Chinese leader did previously. But I see this as more than a legacy building as opposed to power grabbing, because this doesn't come too far off in terms of what he did when he called African leaders to Russia just a few months ago to come and sit and have a discussion about how Russia could help, where we see him lending a hand to Bo Johnson considering Brexit, where we see him giving some kind of advice with what we see as what we would call quote unquote the crisis between Iran and the United States, where he's offering his hand or rubbing shoulders with the leaders coming out of China and such. It's clear that this gentleman is not looking at a power grab, because in terms of power, he already has it, right? But what he's looking at, as far as I can see, is legacy building. And Russia then definitely will not be ignored as a power that would be considered when it came to then world dominance, or even want to talk about neo-imperialism, if that would ever come into play. So one, I don't see that Russia would definitely be ignored, and I don't see that Putin, as a voice that will be heard in the future, is one that will be ignored either. But it is more about legacy, it is more about influence than it is about grabbing power and making sure that all beck and call is given to him within the Russian state. And we can see a lot of that, whereby, like I said, the outstretched hand that goes to China in terms of trade relations, in terms of foreign relations and foreign policy, in terms of what we see, the outstretched hand that goes towards Great Britain, in what we see very clearly that he's made some constitutional reforms, or at least putting out a theory for constitutional reform that insists that way past 2024, this man is still going to be in the limelight. And we can see that what he's doing is that he's laying the brickwork, he's laying the cement and putting the bricks in place so that when he's out of the seat, he's still in the seat. And I think it's brilliant. I think it comes quiet, silent, yet deadly, in the sense that he's going to be able to wield influence. He's not grabbing for power, but he's forming a legacy that is going to be remembered for a very, very long time. I don't see Russia as being, of course, we've seen that their policy has changed, and quite directly so. Whereas we saw Russia previously as the dark state, and of course, from the dregs of the Cold War and how they would deal with other countries.
And who gave us that image?
Well, it was interesting because they were painted that way by other Western powers.
Yes.
Where Russia was painted as that. I mean, that's very clear that they were painted as this by specifically the United States.
Are they really a dark state?
They are not.
which is why I said that they were painted
they're
this
just
way.
being
This
painted
is
that
the way
way.
in which they were painted over time. But I think it has
Maybe
also
Ndu,
been.
you can tell us, what is it
has
that,
also,
that
just hold
Putin
on.
has said he's going to do?
It has also been very deliberate on their part that they have made sure that this image has actually changed, especially with the extension of negotiations or deliberations with other countries. We didn't really see that before. So even with this painting of an image in one way or another, we didn't really see an outstretched hand to other countries or other nations in terms of deliberations the way we have seen it most recently. And I think a lot of this has come during the time of Putin's presidency, and he's been very deliberate in how he has outstretched his hand to other countries. And this is what we're talking about. Having a sit down with Bo Johnson and talking about, all right, my friend, this is essentially what you can do, even with Brexit.
Yeah.
This is how you can work as a sole entity, as a country. We would not see that 20 years ago. We wouldn't see that kind of outstretched hand. We wouldn't see that. We wouldn't see with the Chinese leader the way in which he has basically had a buddy-to-buddy conversation in terms of, all right, how do we get ourselves moving and moving forward? So it really isn't about a power grab as much as it is about influence in the world and definitely changing that image, because regardless of whether it was painted, it was perceived by the rest of the world.
I was saying, so just bring us up to speed again in exactly what has Putin said. What's going to happen in terms of the leadership of Russia going forward?
Well, essentially what he did previously is that he altered the constitution so that he allowed himself to come back as president. It was unconstitutional for a third term, and this sees him now going into the presidency in 2024. So he made it that he would stick around, number one. Whether everybody wants to see whether it was in the law or not, but he saw himself as the one who was going to be able to change this image. And it was an attempt to see that he would lay the foundations from president to prime minister, which is essentially going to happen. So you would have a powerful prime minister with a celebratory president, a ceremonial president rather. And this essentially is what we are seeing that's going to happen in Russia. Of course, putting himself in for the
he'll
running.
still be the main
He's
man.
still going to be the main man, essentially.
I've actually found it, yeah. So
He will still, and in this case, he will be the prime minister.
this was last
of
week on the
Russia.
15th, right? State of the Nation address. Putin promised that he would step aside in 2024 when his current term expires.
As president.
As at the same time, he outlined a series of sweeping constitutional reforms that would likely go into force this year. Russia will remain a presidential republic, but future presidents will be limited to 2 terms in office. Parliament will have the right to appoint government ministers, including the Prime Minister. Currently, they are selected by the President and approved by Parliament. The changes will also confer additional powers to the State Council, which is now a fairly low-profile advisory body, leading many to believe that Putin imagines himself as the Council's chairman after 2024.
And what this does is that it gives him enough political leverage to influence the direction of Russian
He'll
politics.
still be there.
He will influence
Like
the
the
direction of
godfather of
Russian,
Russia.
absolutely, and he will influence and to a large extent shape Russian politics in the future. And it's not only for internal politics, but for global politics as well.
You know, the thing about Vladimir Putin, of course, he's been demonized. He has interfered with many countries. He annexed Crimea. He interfered with the elections in the US. He has, championed war in several places. But, of course, he's been demonized as this man who has clung on to power for long. With this kind of announcement where he says, you know what, this is what I'm proposing. So by 2024, when my term expires, no more. Future presidents serve 2 terms, exit. Parliament has the right to appoint a prime minister, no longer the president appointing a prime minister. Basically, he's setting the country towards a path of reform and prosperity, where he says, all right, this is what the world is coming to, and because I'm not prepared to subject myself to this, I'll step aside, and this is what I'll leave the country with going forward. I think this is visionary leadership.
Of course, and there you go. Exactly. This is what he's trying to do, as far as I'm concerned, cement his legacy. Because at the end of the day, the pat on the back goes to him in terms of what then he's been able to do and clear the path for in the future in terms of, one, in Russia's internal politics and as well as Russian foreign policy. So definitely, he will be the one who has been credited with this move. He's the one.
When Mother Russia was crumbling and collapsing, up came Vladimir Putin. Held it together, brought it together to the power, to the world stage, ensured that everybody who has to have a conversation about anything in the world must have Russia on the table, and then he steps aside.
And by the time that is happening, these conversations are already taking place to the point that
strategy, or is it just being too selfish?
Ask yourself what Vladimir Putin was before he got into politics. or open politics.
Spy.
Precisely. He was an information gatherer. Now, people who gather information know a lot about everybody and know anything and everything.
Yeah.
Now, you throw this into political arena and ask yourself, you can't get anybody who can be better informed than this person. And if you're talking about the networks he has, they don't diminish when you become Prime Minister or President. They increase.
They increase, if anything.
Because then when you're President, you then have the power to not only enhance, for instance, the budget for such functions, but you also have the ability to expand the workforce, the scope. You have the ability to do everything.
Yep.
And if you're there for as long as Putin has been, can you imagine the number of people who owe him allegiance? Or who owe allegiance to him?
Globally.
Precisely.
Right.
So, such a person, when you say he's stepping down, all he's doing is he's decided he is now not going to be chairman of the board, he's going to be the patron. So it's not really an active position.
Yeah.
You actually can't see his hand in every day, but he's still in charge.
But the chairman
he's
will
still
never
in
make any
charge.
decision
Without consulting him.
the patron.
him.
And even if you ever come up with a new chairman, you have to go and ask him, do you approve of
Of
so
this
and so?
chairman. And usually such clever people, he won't be alone.
Yeah.
I remember they had what they call a Politburo. There will be other people who are in that particular... It's a committee of experts.
Yeah.
Yes. And they... So that if one isn't there... Put it this way. Power in such establishments are handed over. You may have an election, you may have all this, but it's passed on. Okay, so-and-so passes it on to... And you pass it on to people who you know have a similar thinking to yours. And usually it is someone whom you have mentored. That's how it works.
Like he ensured he was mentored by Boris.
Yes.
Oh, yes, he was.
He ensured that he's the one who's been most mentored by Boris Helsin. And therefore, he rises to that position.
Consider also, it's actually a business model if you think about it. Russia is actually being run like a business with a board of directors.
Yep.
And the thing about board of directors, they also tend to be people who own that company. So, yes, own. So these are the people who actually own it.
Right.
And you can join the club of ownership, you can be a shareholder, but you meet a certain criteria, and with the time you stand a chance of getting a big portion of this particular pie. Even in the days of so-called communism at its peak, one thing that party members, high-ranking party members, they all had dachas or residences in the Black Sea, meaning their lives were not like everybody else's lives. That is the truth of the matter. And they would even take trips to Western Europe, something which was considered a massive treat then. Now, we are not in that era anymore. And one could argue that era was necessary if you consider where Russia had come from and the poverty levels that they had. You needed a certain policy that would bring in a certain element of, not equality, of equity. Yes, because equality tends to be a little more elusive. Okay, equity is often more possible because you're talking about opportunity being available to many
To everybody.
people.
Well,
Yes.
yeah.
So someone like this who has grown up in that system would understand how to take the system to the next generation, and that's what it's doing.
But also it's about being clever, being wise, and being selfless to some extent, not to a great extent, because there are other leaders.
This one you have to explain.
Right, because
there are other leaders who, in that similar position, would decide that I am going to stay on forever.
the bloke's been there for 20 years already, and he still has another 3 or so odd years to go.
He's fresh. He's energetic.
In this case, do you see how it's to me, it's the total opposite of selfish, because in this sense, he understands that there's a hue and cry to get him out. But at the same time, he still wants to be there in terms of influence of how the country's politics and foreign policy will be shaped. So he's been very clever and said, okay, in order for me to do this, I still need to be in the seat of power. So we're going to go ahead and do an unconstitutional thing and change the constitution, which allows me to stay on for a 3rd term, so that then while there, I can then make these other reforms, which allow me to really still be powerful, even though I'm not in the seat of the presidency. There's nothing further from selfishness there.
You know that
selfless.
people who have been known as saviors, people who have been known as revolutionaries, have done exactly
the same thing.
Yes, because they're saying it's for the people.
They say it's for the people. Yeah.
Well, have you ever heard of any politician who does anything which
For
is not
themselves.
for the
It's
people?
for the
Right.
people.
It's always for the
It's
people.
what the people want.
Yes, the people have told us this. Even if it's just the individual and somebody else.
The noise of the voice of the
The
people.
voice of the people, even if it's just three
Sifuna was
voices.
telling us about the voice of the people.
Well, yes, it's clear that ODM hears those voices. Well, they do. And you see, if you consider the things they say, they do resonate. But unfortunately, any resonance from statements made by politicians, you have to, even as you listen, you have to pause.
Take
have
it
to
with a
pause.
pinch of salt.
Pause.
Because
Yes.
something will be added there.
Just pause and give it. Because how can a politician present or sell an idea unless they present it in the best possible light?
Yes.
And if you're going to appeal to people who may not know what you're saying, you have to ensure that you cloak this statement in the people. Because then these are the people you're talking to will then form and become part of the larger the people. It is a sales pitch, and it is an excellent sales pitch.
Let's just go to their neighbor, Russia's neighbor. President Xi Jinping just the other day changed the constitution to allow himself to be president for life.
Yes.
That guy has the right idea.
Right?
He's got it.
Why
Look
do
here.
it piecemeal?
If
Let me
if
be
I say
here.
that what I'm doing right now is so fantastic,
This
and
whole
so
thing of
superb,
10-year, 10-year,
why are we
10-year
giving
blocks?
somebody else another opportunity to do so? You might as well leave me there to do it and complete this work that I've started. The only thing that then would remove you from office, in this case, is death, right? So we're doing so well now. In my term, during my my administration, we became the number one power in the world. We overtook what was the world power for the last 25 years as the United States. We overtook them. Look at what I have been able to do for the people. Look at how so why not get in and step in and allow myself then to rule for as long as my heart is beating, essentially.
But I also see what Xi Jinping doing just being another long game as well, right? So he does not want to do it for 10 years. Also, he does not want the committee to be the one that decides his successor. He wants to play a very instrumental role in deciding who his successor is going to be without having to consult his entire leadership committee at the top of the party. I don't think Xi Jinping sees himself being the president of Russia in another 25 years.
China.
Of China, rather, in another 25 years. I think it's the same thing that Putin was doing at those initial stages. Amending the constitution, allowing his prime minister to become president. He becomes prime minister so he can get another opportunity to come in as president. Same, playing the long game and ensuring that his legacy is cemented, and then he'll hand over the reins of power.
Right, but he couldn't step into this position and say he wanted to be
Eric,
president for life, because I mean the
Eric,
voice of
what you
dissent,
described
the voice of
doesn't-
dissent was
In
already
Russia.
right. It was already the
Voice
murmuring-
of dissent in
there was
Russia
already
is
murmuring.
nothing.
There was already murmuring there, and it was quite evident. I mean, just from what we see and what we've been able to read, that this was taken into consideration when he was making this decision, that he did not want a situation whereby globally it would be felt that the protest in Russia came against this, and this is one of the reasons why he made this decision. in the
Remember,
way in which he
protests in
did.
Russia have not just begun, right? We have had people, the Pussy Riot. We've had people like Khodorkovsky. But just because you thought he's the richest man in Russia, he thought therefore he could have a voice. He found himself behind bars in the coolers for long. So, in terms of Putin actually dealing with dissent and an insurrection, he'd have done it. He'd have done it.
Let me ask the question.
I think he looked at it and said, well, what's the best thing for me to do? Do I want to fight? Do I want to...
There's a clear game of political musical chairs that one sees in a place like Russia or China. Countries that had previously been known as totalitarian have a way in which they do things, and their actions must be seen in the light of how they think and how they run their politics. Now, having a strong leader is something that is important for very many people in these countries. A president who they feel stands for their country, has
Yes.
their interests at heart. This issue of these massive freedoms takes a backseat. Now, Putin has that image. The president of China has that image. From a Western perspective, these are dictators who want to continue extending their term.
clinging on to...
Oh, for sure, clinging on to
But
power.
I don't think that the vast majority of people in this country share that particular view. Not necessarily.
They're fine.
I don't think. I mean, like, I think that just from what we've been able to see and hear, yes, I would agree with that. That the people of Russia don't necessarily see a problem with the way things are being run. Okay, fine. We are able to survive or exist as an economy. We're able to, in terms of our public administration, governance policy, things seem to be working. So why rock the boat if it's all right? You, on the other hand, if you want to see it as authoritarianism, or if you want to see it as a dictatorship in modern day governance, then that's
yours.
fine.
It's
That's
fine.
yours. But in terms of painting it as a totally different thing, that doesn't come into play. Just like China, with where they are now and what they were faced with just 30 years ago, I mean, you can imagine they're fine. You want to call it a dictatorship, you want to talk about tyrannical rule, whatever you want to say. But coming from where we were, in terms of the levels of poverty that we saw, in terms of, just abject poverty, and we had a whole generation of people who were not able to fend for themselves in any way, shape, or form.
It wasn't one generation.
I mean, and then that was
It was
then
generational.
right, and then that was
Yes.
that was turned on its head in 30 years, right? They're not looking for you to change it, and they're not. I don't think they would take it. They wouldn't.
It's working for us.
It is working for us. So don't rock the boat. Again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And that is the attitude that I believe quite a lot of people have. However, step in a leader who says, "All right, since that is the general feeling, why don't I just then remain in this position of power for as long as I am alive? Not as long as I can.
If you
as long as I'm
consider
alive."
that the Western style of democracy isn't quite what it was advertised as, if people prefer a different form of rulership or governance that the West refers to as dictatorship, well, so be it. Yes. It isn't as though everybody thinks that the democracy is the best way of governing. It is the best way of presenting a situation.
And everybody's definition of democracy then can also be said to be
Yes.
different.
Not only that, even the application, in addition to what you're saying, has also proven to be different. You'll find, for instance, remember when we were discussing forms of government, and we talked about a parliamentary system.
Yeah.
When you talk about a parliamentary system, one would ask you, what exactly do you mean by parliamentary system? Because it isn't just one. Are you talking about a Westminster style? What style are you referring to? Because what the Germans have is a parliamentary system, but it is not a Westminster style parliamentary system.
Yeah.
Yes. If you ask, for instance, say, for instance, one of the Nordic countries, they could argue and tell you they also have a parliamentary system, but they would tell you they have a president or a prime minister. The fact is, with time, what was the fundamental structure of so-called democracy has been restructured by countries to suit their purposes.
Yes.
And you'll find it works.
And it works for them. As long as it works for them.
Yes.
It's good. Now, comparing the two leaders, maybe as we start looking at what Putin's what he's trying to do globally and how he wants to be remembered globally. Just going back into China, if you look at Xi Jinping and him saying, "I want to be the president for life because things are working," well, somebody can argue that yes, the 30 years of work wasn't done by Xi Jinping.
Of course, no. I mean,
Right?
he
it was
found
done by others.
Yes.
And those others had agreed to follow a certain set of rules. They had agreed to follow a certain formula. I'll be in this 10 years, I execute, I implement, and then I leave, and then somebody else comes, 10 years, implement, leave. And then she just comes and decides, you know what, we can multiply these 10 years
for
life to factor in the length of my life.
Of course, that's when where you would see that there would be a problem.
Actually, where would the problem be? Tell me, where would the problem be?
Well, I mean, that's where you would see that a lot of people would have a problem
He's
with this.
going
because
against
then
what we call a gentleman's agreement.
agreement,
Yes,
whereby
but
it was
call it that.
I would come in and for a particular point in time, but then
Do
you
you
decide
thi-
that you are the one.
Do you
then
think he
who
made that
can-
decision individually?
No, he had some few sycophants, of course, who helped him make the decision, but he made the decision.
Look, when I asked you to look back at how governments such as this one had a structure, the Communist Party had a committee, and the leadership for the longest time was chairman.
Yes.
Chairman
Whether it was
Mao.
Chairman Mao or Chairman, it was Chairman, or in Russia it was Secretary General.
Yes.
Okay? Meaning, it was rulership by a committee.
Yes.
Are you saying that committee has disappeared? I'm saying it hasn't.
I'm saying he has influenced this committee.
Of course,
He has penetrated
has.
this committee. He has weakened the committee. That's why he's becoming the more powerful
Not
person.
necessarily weakened. Not necessarily weakened. It's just that, look, these are politicians just like ours. What we call weakening may be an understanding that you stand to gain more in this setup. When politicians agree to something, yes, the argument you're putting forward is maybe a gun was put to their head. I'm saying no.
Not necessarily.
A basket of goodies was placed before them.
Yes.
Right. So
They were influenced.
your resolve was
And that
influence at the end of the day.
was negative influence. It was going against what you stood for initially. And if anybody comes up and they have a huge, a loud voice, Boshilai, come up, 2 or 3
even that
corruption
then can be
allegations,
toppled as
you
well.
and your wife dead in a week.
Are people not allowed to change their minds?
Isn't that a question to be considered?
Well, yeah, you can be influenced to change your mind. That's why you have a mind, right?
Surely. Surely. Surely.
Oh, sweetie. The way in which it can go. But again, I don't, and I think also world politics or world governance also then influences a lot of these decisions that this man is making now today. And we, like I said before this, I don't know that there was an extension in the concerted effort in which we saw it, for example, to embrace African leaders or to embrace the African business climate the way they have in 2019 and then moving forward in 2020. We're going to see a lot of that invitation now translate into something more solid, more concrete in terms of a relationship between the Russian government and African countries, and this is as a direct result of the initiative set out primarily by Putin himself, and we can see this as extension of what they want Russia to be known as, coming as the world sees this country, and it's very clear that this is something that he is going to be given in terms of the credit for doing.
Let's come back and discuss some of those initiatives
influence.
and how he's building his legacy, globally. This is Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, who has decided that he's not going to be president come 2024. He's not going to vie again for presidency. He's going to step aside, but he'll still be an influential figure in Russian politics and governance. Good morning, 9:30.
Spice FM, Malindi. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Traffic.
All right, so taking a look at things, Mombasa Road still giving a lot of problems right around the Cabanas and trying to come down to the General Motors section. All right, you can use the Red Hill Link Road today coming off of Waiyaki Way because that situation was cleared up, and so there's an alternate route for you. Naivasha Road, of course, this morning still giving us some problems, of course, with school traffic from two major schools there on Naivasha Road and Gong Road, respectively. Coming off of Thika Road and getting into the city centre, not so bad anymore. As you can now get to the Pangani underpass and then through to the Globe Cinema roundabout, traffic is moving and finally moving smoothly. That's what the traffic looks like right around now, unless there's anything out of the ordinary now popping up its head. Do let us know. Spice FM KE 0719 012 600.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
28 minutes to 10 o'clock. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. The phone lines are now open. We're talking global politics. In this particular instance, we're talking Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, and what he has decided to do to change the system of government in Russia and how people are going to be electing their future leaders. And of course, he himself stepping aside and giving himself some new role. Oh, well, he hasn't directly done so, but it's widely expected that he has created some new institution where he's going to be the head of a committee. and this will give him some huge influence on this. 0719 012 600. That's 0719 012 600. Before we went into the traffic break, Ndu, you are telling us about how Putin is cementing his legacy in Russia and abroad.
Well, I mean, first of all, I mean, if you just want to look at what we talked about, maybe the second colonization of Africa, and then, of course, Russia being one of the big players here, to see how they could come up and spread their influence. Now, in this case, of course, African countries have a say in terms of then what they're able to accept and what they're able to do. But it comes...
They do.
They have a say.
They do.
Well, I mean, they can agree to this or not.
They can.
They can vote no in the referendum. Maybe.
Well, I mean, if Russia comes and is offering you
Maybe.
trade relations, you can say yes or you can say no. It's very simple.
How many cases do we know of where things have been offered to African governments and they've said no?
Well, we don't see cases where Russia has ever offered a hand. I mean, of course, when it has happened like this, of course, we saw African ministers already playing with the arms
By the way,
that were offered, and that happened
Russia has been
in rapid
influencing
succession.
this continent since the 60s.
Yes, I am aware, but I am saying we have not
But it had-
seen
it had sort of stopped or reduced, right?
We've not seen it come out, especially with the invitations that we saw. 40 plus at a go, come to the Kremlin and let's sit down and have a conversation in the manner in which it happened in 2019. We've never seen that happen before.
No, we haven't.
No. So, I mean, here it was clear that at this point, especially for his legacy, he said, look, this is the conversation that needs to happen, and it needs to happen with these folks. If we're going to get them see us the way they see other countries now, China, for example, as opposed to leaving the whole US, Western Europe, allied nations that came together, we need to have them see us too as an instrument of influence.
It's a trend that China began. Okay, this meeting that our president went to in the UK is a smaller example of the same thing. It seems to be a trend. Call a few presidents.
Globally, if you want to bring them home, let them come sit here.
Drink tea, as
Drink
Kenyans would tell you.
Yeah.
Sit down first of all, then drink tea.
Drink tea.
And then have a round table discussion. Okay, carry on.
And then you leave, and everybody goes with a basket of something.
Right. Well, it's interesting that even with Brexit now, we see that coming up. I mean, exactly with the UK Africa summit that just took place a few days ago. Now is what we're looking at. Is that it's not coincidental that it happened with this new prime minister, with this new decisions in terms of Brexit, to say, okay, we still even as we are standing on our own.
Bless you.
Even as we're standing on our own, we need influence.
Paul.
This saliva has no shame.
Yes.
Does it not know that you're in the middle of presenting a very important, something serious? Shameless saliva. Going around. Surely. It has so many places it can go to, and at this moment in time, it must follow that direction.
There you go. In this case, not so many places Russia can go to, and decided that it will come to Africa as one of the places whereby Putin's legacy will definitely be cemented. And it is clear that he was able to do that, and it's clear that he will be remembered for that. Nobody else in the history of presidents of this country has been able to do that. And like we said, did they of course, it could be that is the habit, that whenever goodies are offered to African nations, we
They all
back them
take
up.
it.
However, we saw them accepting of these
Yes.
very, very quickly. Coming out of Russia, no less. Coming out of China, here's what we offer. Very fast. We take it and we run with it. So, I mean,
For him, it works well.
interestingly enough, coming just before the UK Africa summit, they had there was a conversation that was had between Putin and Bo Johnson in terms of what you need to do. Even as you stand alone now as the Great Britain, these are certain things that you need to do.
My advice to you
This
would
is my
be-
advice to you. So yes, suddenly he's taking on this position of big brother of the world.
Oh, yes.
You
And
know?
he's doing it so well.
Very well.
And I like the way he's doing it. I mean, look, the Middle East, so he's there. Yeah, we've been talking about Syria and now Iraq and the kind of influence that they're trying to have in Afghanistan as well. Afghanistan and Russia have had this negative, image or engagement with one another, and now he's trying to help them.
Let me be the one.
We're just Russia. We are not so bad, man. We are good, and everything else about him and the invasions of Georgia and Ukraine, about Iran and the Iranian nuclear deal. Russia is there and saying, no, look, we need to ensure that we help Iran while at the same time ensuring that they are not growing their nuclear capability. Russia is right there where US used to be. And it's a good thing to have another
another power to wield
yeah,
the
another
influence
center
in the
of power.
world. We have Belarus that's in dire economic straits, and what has Russia done? You know what? We can see where you are. We can understand that things are really tough for you. Come, be a part of us once again. Just come,
Rejoin us,
and then we can we lap
So
up
what is
all
this
of
going
these
to be called?
problems that you're going through.
Belarussia, right?
That's what it is right now. Let's lap up all of these problems that you're going through. Let us actually be the ones to help
Allow
you.
us to help
Don't
you
suffer
absorb
on
these
your
problems.
own. Let's absorb them for you and let's help. This is the conversation that they're currently having. And from all indications, they're probably going to lean in that direction and say, all right then, state sovereignty be
The
damned.
prodigal son returns.
So, and then again, who was at the forefront of negotiating
Vladimir
all this?
Putin.
Vladimir Putin. And the conversations that we've seen around the world, this guy will not be ignored. And that's what I'm saying. It's not a power grab for him. This is spheres of influence that he's laying down and saying, you will look back on these days and you will see 1, 2, 3 things that we've knocked off of this list. And you will be able to attribute the credit to me.
And I bet Russians will be, those Russians who study him in future will be proud. We'll see. This is a man who was completely patriotic about Mother Russia. At the very end. So yes, when the USSR was breaking apart, and then we had Boris Yeltsin, and Russia's power around the world was completely diminished. Right, it was weakened. Right, and then here comes a man who believes in the strength of Mother Russia, and he works around the clock. Takes him over 20 years, but he leaves it at a point where Russia is now also back the central position on the seat, on the table.
I don't think we
Any
can
conversation in the world right now must involve Russia.
And that's the thing. It is centered, of course, it's definitely involving. I don't think there's a conversation that's being had right now in terms of global policy or foreign policy by countries that ignores the Russian contribution at this point, whether we're talking about arms, whether we're talking about trade, whether we're talking about bilateral agreements that are being made on whatever level. Russia is involved, whereas previously, just some odd 30, 20 years ago, they would have been ignored completely. And this man then will take the credit for having brought them back into the circles where it is absolutely necessary for any country worth its salt to play in. So, I mean, it's very clear to me that the spheres of influence is what is being pushed here.
0719-012-600. Also, you can post in your comments on Facebook and Twitter at SpiceFMKE, at Nduoko, at CT Muga, at Eric Latif. And we are talking about Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, who recently, just last week, on the 15th of January, he announced that he is not going to be vying for president again in 2024. There will be some changes in government in 2024. The people of Russia are going to be able to elect a president, and that president will only serve for a non-renewable 2-year term. And then the parliament will be able to pick a prime minister. Right now, the president picks the prime minister, and then that prime minister is approved by parliament. But we'll have a system which allows the parliament to pick a prime minister. What kind of is that? What we are?
Is that where you're going?
We're looking at with our BBI, where the parliament can elect a prime minister, but the people also elect a president. So what's the role of the president? And then there's still that committee. What kind of government is that?
It's interesting, but at the end of the day, in terms of who rules, it will not be the people's choice. Which is what we're having in Russia right now. They will not be the ones who will essentially elect their president.
Actually, remember that whether it was the Politburo or whether it is what you're calling elected leaders, as far as the mantra for this thing goes, they are representing the will of the people.
As far as the mantra goes,
and they are looking after the interest of the people.
Of their people.
So you cannot say categorically that they are not representing the people. They are. Start from the beginning. They are Russians. And they are Russian leaders who are leading Russian people. So how can they not
And that's their job. Their mandate to lead Russian people is to represent them.
Yes, so how can you... How
to do what's best for the people.
Now, if you want to debate this best, we need to ask a Russian what they think.
What they think is the best. But it's clear that what they're coming from, that they've worked so hard over time to maintain a certain status quo. And they're not looking for anybody to then step into the ring and mess it up. At the end of the day, they're not looking for anybody to come in. By the way,
even in a democracy, do you really think it's different?
It's not.
Well.
Think.
It's not.
These so-called Western democracies, you think it's actually any different?
They're not looking for anybody to come and topple things. They're not
No.
looking for anybody to come and mess things up the way in which it has been created over time. But of course, the definitions then that are given that are different from one place to the next. But at the end of the day, nobody is looking. But it's just that it would be seen to be fair. So what we do is allow that the power goes to you. And then after some time, it comes back to us. And we hope that through this rigorous activities of electioneering and voting, that the power would be retained in our hands. But that doesn't happen. Whereas in another system of government, an edict then goes through and we say, look, I will stay. As opposed to leaving it in your hands to make the decision and maybe it doesn't go our way.
The fundamental
Really, that's what we're
difference
looking
is
at.
one of tradition, because the Western tradition in apparently adhering to the law differs. And even the laws themselves differ. Please understand that if you placed any of these Western leaders in a Russian situation, I doubt if they'd behave any different from the way Putin is behaving. The tradition of their laws don't allow them to do the sort of thing that Putin can do and get away with. And we say get away, but in that country they're not getting away. That's what the law
what
allows,
is.
and he's able to do it. Now, how many presidents? Remember, we ourselves come from a background where we started off as a multi-party state, went into a single party, became law, single state, we moved away from it, and now we're dealing with the circus of multipartyism. Okay, that's where we are.
Full circle.
Yes, that's where we are. But the truth of the matter is, if you look at utterances that politicians make when they're not in power and when they're in power, or if you look at utterances and the things they do within their parties, these activities, if you examine them, not under a microscope, if you just examine them, even not so closely, they all seem to tend towards dictatorial tendencies. But the utterances are democratic. But the deeds rarely are. Right now, Boris Johnson is Prime Minister, is he not?
Yes.
How is he responding to the press, the media?
How is he?
Well, that's homework for you, but the relationship isn't as cozy as you would imagine. If he had more power, I'm sure he would have clamped on the press or the media a lot more. But again, the tradition of their laws do not allow him. I started with Boris Johnson, and I'm going to Trump. Look at the way President Trump has managed his country. Look at his utterances, and then look at the things he does, and the things he thinks he has gotten away with. It has brought him to a point where his countrymen want to impeach him. Forget impeaching. They've impeached him.
They want to remove him from office. Right.
Yes. Now, it happens so rarely in this country that for it to happen, you get the impression that all levels and capacities for intolerance have been surpassed. So they figured, Apana, this guy, I think the best thing to
We need
do
to rein him in.
no. Because we don't know what crazy thing.
We don't know what he can do if he
next.
remains in office. So the best thing that we need to do is have a conversation about how he can be removed, and hope that all our clamor and all our conversations will actually result in people making the decision to actually take him out. As
I
it
keep
were.
telling you, but I look at it differently, though. I just say it's the people who think that they are the owners of America suddenly realizing that they have an outsider in the room, and they're trying to kick the outsider out of the room, and the outsider has clung onto a frame of the door and is saying, I am not exiting. This
That
particular
is
room.
clearly a perspective that is worth considering, yes.
14 minutes to 10 o'clock. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. 0719 012 600.
Spice FM, Nakuru. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic
Make
ballads.
some noise.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
The interesting thing to look at also is that, in terms of these spheres of influence that Russia's coming out trying to wield, is that it's clear that people are listening, sitting up and taking and paying attention. It could be that because it's all novel in the approach, that has never happened in this way before, where it's coming out in the manner where, Big Brother extension of a hand, of friendship and such. But people are actually taking notice and saying, okay, this is actually an agreement that I could enter into. This is a friendship actually that I could, I could warm up to.
Could work for me.
Yeah, this could work for me, and I could see it working. Conversations that would never be had previously are being had today. And for me, this is legacy making stuff for a guy who, coming out of a country, nobody would think that any kind of global legacy. Nobody actually would attribute it to Russia previously.
Yeah.
But here we see that there's an acceptance of such, and it's likely to be that it will be having conversations around this country and what this man has been able to do for some time. The way now that we're talking about China, the way we spoke about the US, the way we spoke about Western countries coming out of Western Europe, and I think that's what we're seeing now. And the way the globe and the world is changing, I see that even the conversations we have, and in terms of influence, that will change for sure. It would be at their doorstep now that a lot of countries will be running to for help.
Yeah.
The way now that the doors were open by China, of course, still are open, and conversations are being had. I see a lot of people knocking on Russia's door because of the way in which they have positioned themselves
Is
now
it soft
as
power
global
or is it
big
hard power?
Well, definitely in this case, it is soft because it's not in your face, brash, kind of thing.
It's not demanding.
No, it isn't. It's
many
here we
structural
are.
things.
Here is my advice. Here is what I offer. Won't you hear it from my side?
So for
kind
this
of
reason,
thing.
we don't see Putin trying to extend some global influence in terms of politics.
He's
politically.
not bulldozing his way into anything really, but I think he's
like the way we see, for example, he goes into a certain country and says, all right, so here you are the Venezuelans, you are a communist country, and now America is trying to come in and force a new presidency into office. But look at what we've adopted in Mother Russia as the new system of government. Venezuela, take this.
Or even, not even to that extent, but to say that let's even have a conversation, because we must remember it's coming out of a country that was branded as cold and was not having any kind of global relations with any other country except for those who they considered, their allies at the time. But they were never having these conversations. It was cold, dark, the Cold War stemmed from a lot of things, like from a lot, this attitude stemmed what we then came to know as the Cold War, where they were just not speaking, they were not trading, they were not doing anything on the world stage between Russia and the US, for example. So here is a country that was not having a conversation before, suddenly having conversation, suddenly extending a hand of friendship, of big brotherhood.
The Chinese
you're likely to sit up and notice.
Chinese are exporting their product, they're exporting their manufacturing industry, they're exporting their people and their technology. What are Russians exporting apart from gas? And arms. Of
course, and arms and nuclear is a big deal in
what
our
else
world
are they,
today.
What else is this? That
you never quite refer to them as arms. You say security.
Security, yes.
Right. Exporting their security. But interestingly, these were the two things that were top.
Defense capabilities.
Yes.
These were the two things that were top when we had the Russia-Africa summit at the Kremlin. These were the two things that were top. What did you call them? Defense capabilities?
Yes, defense capabilities.
And oil and gas.
Yeah.
Across the countries that they made these offers, from South Africa to Rwanda to Ethiopia to Nigeria. Those were the two.
So in the oil and gas, it's
offered.
the technology that they are offering.
It's a technology.
To come and develop your own oil and gas industry, not for them to take it back to Russia.
No.
Right? Unlike the Chinese who are exporting some of their technology so that you can come and be able to mine and harvest some of your forests, so we can take them back to Russia, to China. For
but in this case,
economic
it's
development.
Extension, and it remains there, as opposed to bringing it back to us. We want to then be able to share in terms of what we've been able to do, we've been able to practice and excel at. Other countries now feel it.
They're not even doing it in terms of culture. China is very strong in trying to export its culture.
Yeah, with its language and everything.
Language and the kind of, their media now is very strong in other parts of the world, which is them just trying to export their culture. Russia is not doing this. So by 2024, what is it that Putin will have done? Apart from just calling guys and sitting down at a table and offering them some cash here and there, what lasting legacy is he going to leave?
Well, we don't know. But like, for example, 2019 saw, a lot of the conversations that previously never happened before. So we don't know what is going to happen this year. We don't know what is in their mind, but it is indicative of something to come.
Up until 1991, when the Soviet Union broke up, Russia didn't perhaps need to involve themselves in what we're discussing. The reason is because they had colonies just around
them.
All these things you seem to we seem to speak of.
They had the Soviet Union, exactly.
Exactly, and they were lesser nations than them. They were people who needed their help. All right, so they focused. China was a non-entity, so they focused on the U.S. And maybe Great Britain and maybe France. But remember, France and Britain had relationships with Russia dating back to the SARS.
Yep.
Perhaps France even more so than the UK. Now, what we're talking about, extending the power, the influence, you need to consider that the Russian embassy was set up in this country in 1963. And for the longest time, Russia did something that China was later to copy and other people were later to consider. They went forth and actually built a university that was intended to educate African students, the Patrice Lumumba University. All right? They understood influence. They understood it very well. The Americans did with their airlift. But the Russians also did. Now, consider also, you fast forward that to a time when the Soviet Union disintegrates. It disintegrates as a bloc, but the influence, in my opinion, doesn't actually, it never really disintegrated. Not really, because the people who rule there are people who were influenced by that very system that they had.
Yeah.
So if you're talking about influence, I would argue the influence has just taken a new shape and a new form. And what we're seeing is Russia trying to fit into this new world order.
Exactly.
Yes.
And probably at some point even be a leader, as opposed to just fit in, but be somebody that, or be one that people look to.
Yeah.
As opposed to understanding your presence somewhere in the periphery, but to say, yes, in terms of I'm going to pick 1, 2, 3, they're definitely amongst
Offer
the
guidance
top.
and
Absolutely.
leadership.
No, but I'm arguing that they never actually lost that significance. In the minds of most people, the USSR may have disintegrated, but I don't think for a second they thought that Russia had stopped being a power.
They hadn't thought that Russia had stopped being a power, but I think what they had stopped doing is considering them so seriously. At some point, you go to let's invade Iraq because there are weapons of mass destruction. Russia is making some noise. Forget about Russia.
They wouldn't consider.
Let's have some coalition. Are NATO countries aligned? Yes, let's go. Right now, make any move on Iran, make any move on any Middle East country.
The Russian factor definitely has to be considered.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's a louder voice now, I think.
It's a stronger voice, not just louder. Because if you look at many, there are countries that are really genuinely quite loud. But
that's just about it.
That's just
it's
about
a barking dog that has no bite.
They're loud. You say, okay, we hear you, and the story ends there. But you ask, what does Russia export? Russia is wealthy because it has vast mineral resources.
Yep.
It has oil. It has one of the largest deposits of natural gas.
Yep.
Russia is not a poor country.
No, it isn't.
This is the thing. And this is what I think people forget. Remember, when we were talking about the Concorde, they had their version, a Tu-144. Okay, there were stories that abounded that it crashed more often than it flew. But that was a story that probably the West propagated.
Yes, right.
In terms of innovation, in terms of industry, again, the West gave the impression that anything that came from Russia disintegrated the moment you sort of put it on the ground. If people were using it in Russia and functioning with it, this story cannot possibly happen.
Yes.
It's the same story that was spread about the Chinese. The Chinese goods don't work. And then you marvel at how it is America's greatest trading partner.
Exactly.
Again.
So how is it that they don't work?
Suddenly.
Yes. So the story of Russia, even as it's being told, I think it comes at the tail end of having to accept that, we may have said this is what Russia was, but we have no choice. It's obvious that this is what they are. So we actually have to tell this story.
I think at the very end, what Vladimir Putin is planning for his future is only he who knows.
Oh, for sure. But I think from all indications...
All the cards are his, and he's going to play them.
He's going to play them, but of course it's for people to remember that
so Eric,
he
you're
was...
suggesting, for all we know, he may be thinking of going to retire in California.
But he's more than a puppet
in this
game.
He'll play this game
He's the
his
puppet
own ways.
master, as
Completely.
it were. Because obviously it's legacy building for him. It's not just a power grab, and definitely looking for, the country as it is to be remembered, but then also his legacy specifically about then what the country was able to achieve because of his direct contribution
Right.
to that. Definitely something that needs to be remembered.
Join us again tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Nduoko, CT Muga, and Eric Latif. At 7 p.m. tonight, join the adults in the room. Yesterday, they had an interesting discussion. Common complaints by wives and husbands and possible fixes. And people were sending in their complaints. Helping the kids with homework is a mommy's job. Why? We should help each other. One of the common complaints.
That's what they were discussing.
Between wives and husbands. Somebody else is saying the following: money, having a plan B in marriage; 3, lack of transparency and accountabilities; 4, in-laws, and much more.
Wow.
Common complaints in marriages.
Plan B in marriage is now which one?
Is which one, I beg?
Having a plan B in marriage.
Oh, having Pangwa Kando.
I think so. This is what Emmanuel Kisiangani, Eric Oduoro Tieno, and Barbara Mbaka, the Duchess of Ikolomani, will discuss every day. This is the kind of conversation that they have every day. Join them tonight, 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Before that, you'll be with Monique between 3 and 7 as she takes you home. Sugar and spice and everything nice on Spice Drive. Now until then is Spice Soul, uninterrupted music. Of course, wherever you are tuning in, we wish you a very lovely day. Join us again tomorrow. We'll have fresh conversations. We'll be discussing, of course, all manner of politics, development, social issues, and everything else. Say goodbye, City.
Goodbye. Let the conversation continue.
Ciao, ciao. See you tomorrow.
The conversation
continues.
Good. The conversation continues as well. Social media platforms, Spice FM KE, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Good morning. It's 10 o'clock.